Chapter 624. Goddammit, Chu Feng was still alive and kicking. Moreover, he was incomparably powerful. Who said he was dead? The Netherworld cat cursed in his heart. This kind of fake news was really a scam. The black yak's fur was glossy black, and his horns were coarse and powerful. He was truly like a demon king. He asked, "Brother, how did you pass these days? Everyone says you died in purgatory, killed by that chick Qin herself. These days she's almost deified." The Manchurian tiger was now very bold and powerful. When the tiger race had cultivated to a certain level, they were naturally imposing without being angry. His multicolored fur was sparkling like gold and stone. He said, "Now, the evolvers of every race are calling her a goddess. This makes us very unhappy. We want to behead her and avenge you." The old donkey was the most shameless. "That's right, we're going to capture her and burn her in front of your cenotaph. We'll send her to you to be your servant girl. Yes, we're going to chop her into 9 pieces and burn them in different places," the black yak added. The Netherworld cat was drenched in cold sweat. These ruthless fellows were each more ruthless than the other. Qin Luoyin's fame in the starry skies had risen to the extreme. Everywhere she went, the young evolvers of every race were incomparably fanatical and viewed her as the perfect goddess. In the end, these fellows were about to kidnap her and burn her in front of Chu Feng's cenotaph. It was too cruel. Chu Feng coughed dryly. "She's not my match. I'll settle things with her slowly in the future." Something's wrong, brother. Why do you look so strange when you mention her? Your gaze is too undulating. Is there something you're hiding?" The Manchurian tiger had a square head and big ears. His eyes were very sharp and emitted a thieving glint. He moved his large head over and looked at Chu Feng. "There's nothing like that. In short, I didn't lose out in the battle with her. I'll settle things with her later and make the damning Pure Land pay a painful price," Chu Feng said righteously. However, when he thought of the entanglement in the purgatory space, that snow-white, crystal-clear body instantly appeared in front of him, causing his heart to sway slightly. Hey, what kind of expression is that? It's definitely rippling. With this old yak's several hundred years of experience as a Casanova, I can tell that there's an enchanting scene here. Something big has happened. The black yak shook his pair of coarse horns with an odd smile on his face. Chu Feng said, "Old Hay, you didn't even settle your first love, the green yak on the Tibetan plateau. You only have regrets. You still can't forget her even after hundreds of years. How dare you call yourself a Casanova and make wild guesses? These are 2 different matters." The black yak's sore spot had been poked. The Manchurian tiger's bell-like eyes emitted a green light as he said, "An explanation is a cover-up. There's definitely something hidden here. Could it be an adultery? Hey brother, you're too heaven-defying. Don't tell me something happened between you and Qin Luoyin?" The old donkey became even more spirited as he said, "The next time I leave the mountains, I'm going to tell the whole world that Qin Luoyin is my brother Chu Feng's maid. Call her little Qin. That'll infuriate those outer realm bastards to death. Don't the myriad star physique Su Qingxian and the outer realm geniuses admire her? Now, this old donkey will tell them that this so-called goddess has long since become my brother Chu Feng's dish. Stay on one side and don't stir up trouble," Chu Feng said with a dark expression. "This definitely isn't stirring up trouble. I'll announce it properly in the future. I'm going to accept interviews from the media in the starry skies and tease the young geniuses of the various races in the universe." Hee-haw, hee-haw. The old donkey was in high spirits. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. He wanted nothing more than to immediately hold a press conference. The Netherworld cat was completely dumbfounded at the sight. He was completely petrified because he had heard and seen everything clearly. He was truly shocked. He also felt that Qin Luoyin and Chu Feng's relationship was unclear. There was something going on between them. That was because Chu Feng's unintentional expression was too abnormal. His heart was rippling. Meow! The night demon cried out loudly. He was in a sorrowful mood, exceptionally unhappy, and extremely angry. What the hell are you crying for? Chu Feng slapped him on the head and took the opportunity to divert everyone's attention. That was because he didn't want to discuss such matters with a group of brothers, no matter how thick his skin was. Surnamed Chu, you've profaned the flawless goddess in my heart. I'm so angry and hateful. The night demon said. Chu Feng was amused and said, You can't even protect yourself, yet you're still fighting for your goddess. Are you stupid? Following that, he kicked the Netherworld cat. He really didn't take the top 100 geniuses in the universe seriously. Hearing such realistic words, the Netherworld cat became disheartened and lowered his head. In the end, he asked unwillingly, What did you do to her? I didn't do anything to her. She wanted to be the mother of my child. Naturally, I wasn't willing, but I didn't expect her to shamelessly launch a sneak attack on me. Sigh, a single slip may cause everlasting sorrow. When I turn back, it's already 100 years later. Chu Feng shook his head and sighed. This cat will fight it out with you. The Netherworld cat scuttled up and clawed at Chu Feng's face. That was because his heart was incomparably gloomy after hearing Chu Feng's smug and pretentious behavior. Go away. Chu Feng flipped him over with a slap, causing his black fur to stand on end. He said disdainfully, You're just a cat. Don't tell me you want to have a love affair between humans and beasts. You're too shameless. I've long since become a human. My current cat form can only be considered a supplementary Dharma body. I won't show it under normal circumstances. You demon, when the time comes, I'll tell all the geniuses in the universe to take revenge for Goddess Qin. Old Donkey came over and said, You little cat, you're so insensible. I'm going to hold a news conference in the starry sky now. When the time comes, you'll come with me and be that sad background picture to contrast my brother's achievements. It's settled then. Hee-haw, hee-haw. Chu Feng pulled Old Donkey back and said, Don't act recklessly. At the very least, I can't be exposed now. I still have to deal with them later. It's not good to reveal the heavenly secrets now. Before long, Chu Feng saw his parents. Apart from them, a group of Kunlun great demons were also present inside Mount Eternal. In addition, there were also Zhou Quan, Mount Wudong's old grandmaster, Great Woods Temple's old ape, and others. With so many people meeting, it was incomparably lively and exceptionally excited. Obviously, they were the same as Old Black, Manchurian Tiger, Old Donkey, and others. They were only inside the mountain gate and hadn't entered the true trial grounds. Only Yellow Cattle and Ouyang Feng could truly set foot in that kind of place. That was because the requirements for talent were too high. That was a place to nurture demonic sages. It was fine if they succeeded, but once they failed, they would become living dead. Little Feng. Chu Feng's parents hugged him and immediately burst into tears. These days were too torturous for them. They washed their faces with tears every day and thought he wouldn't come back. Even though Black Yak, Manchurian Tiger, and others comforted Chu Feng by saying that he was only trapped in a dimensional space and would escape sooner or later, everyone knew that the chances were slim. Brother, you're finally back. Zhou Quan shook his four horns and cried out. His eyes were red as he wiped away his tears. The old Lama, Mastiff King, Wudong Grandmaster Wu Qifeng, Great Woods Temple's old ape, and the others also stepped forward. They were deeply moved and incomparably happy at the same time. Yellow Cattle and Ouyang Feng weren't here. They had entered the depths of Mount Eternal to train and temper themselves like crazy. That was because Yellow Cattle had long since sworn to avenge Chu Feng and wash those enemies with blood. This kind of reunion naturally couldn't do without good wine. They exchanged toasts and chatted to their heart's content. Chu Feng understood a lot of things. Others were fine, but what he couldn't stand the most was that the Earth's True One had set his sights on them. The Earth's True One's Tao protector, Yuchi Kong, had always been roaming the Eastern Sea. He wanted to hunt them and capture Chu Feng's parents to obtain the robbery induction breathing technique. Yellow Cattle and Ouyang Feng had suffered a great loss during their last exchange of blows. Fortunately, they had escaped in time and returned to Mount Eternal. Otherwise, they would have been in danger. This was also the reason why the two were cultivating like crazy. Yuchi Kong, Earth's True One Zhoushang, are you tired of living? Chu Feng was furious on the spot. They were all native evolvers, but these two hadn't gone to fight against the people from the outer realms. Instead, they were aiming their butcher's knife at their own people. This was really difficult for Chu Feng to accept. Before this, Yuchi Kong had asked him for the robbery induction breathing technique on behalf of the Earth's True One. Now, things had become even worse. During Chu Feng's battle to the death, he had looked on with folded arms. After he died, he had actually come to hunt his family to obtain the inheritance. This was intolerable. Chu Feng's voice was cold as he said, I discovered Yuchi Kong when I came in just now. He was sitting on a lush green bamboo boat and hiding in the dark. He harbors malicious intentions. This old man should be killed. The Black Yak nodded and said, This old man is very powerful and sharp at the same time. Back then, after the battle at Mount Kunlun, we rushed to Mount Longhu immediately to save people. In the end, this old man arrived right after us and almost succeeded. He's really not a good thing. He's very close to the people from the outer realms, but he tried to kill us. He really should be killed. I'll go kill him, Chu Feng said coldly. The Manchurian tiger immediately stopped him and said, No, brother, don't be impulsive. This old man might be 2 realms above the visualization realm. He's very powerful. Don't suffer a great loss because of a moment of anger. Chu Feng frowned after hearing this. He had the equality of all life monastic robe on him, but last time, Qin Luoyin had turned dark and used the dream dance. She was like an ancient divine shaman offering sacrifices and actually ignored the domain on the monastic robe, causing him to suffer a great loss. Now, this Yuchi Kong was at least 2 realms higher than him. He had no choice but to treat him with caution. Chu Feng thought about it and took out the diamond chakram. It was completely different now. There were some threads wrapped around it and contained within. One had to know that these threads were formed from the incineration of a supreme symbol on the same level as the black talisman. It was a sacrifice offered to the clay idol at the end of the reincarnation cycle. However, he put it away again. The diamond chakram was indeed very powerful, but it could only be said to have unparalleled growth. It might not necessarily be effective at the moment. Afterwards, he glanced at the stone box again. This item was very strange and belonged to the passive type. It could protect him on the reincarnation path, but it had never taken the initiative to display its might. His heart was moved. There was a 6-colored flame within the stone box. It was bright and sparkling. This was the flame of 6 paths of reincarnation. It would be of great use if he could use it unexpectedly. However, in the end, Chu Feng chose a blade. The scabbard was almost rotten. He had seized it on the reincarnation path. There was a desiccated corpse-like entity in the desert responsible for patrolling and protecting the reincarnation path. At that time, Chu Feng could be said to be extremely daring. He had forcibly seized the mysterious ancient blade from the hands of those brainless soldiers who had almost sunk into deathly stillness. I'll go and give it a try. I won't be able to dispel the depression in my heart if I don't give Yuchi Kong and the Earth's True One a blow, said Chu Feng. This time, he was truly incomparably shocked and furious. He felt that Yuchi Kong and the Earth's True One were shameless and intolerable bullies. After his death, they actually didn't let go and wanted to kill his family. How could he endure this? Brother, that old fellow is too powerful. Don't be impulsive. The Black Yak and the others dissuaded him. No matter. I'll retreat immediately if I really can't beat him. Even the purgatory space can't trap me. Please believe in my ability to escape, said Chu Feng. He left Mount Eternal after suppressing the Netherworld cat. Chu Feng walked into the misty region and observed the situation nearby. As expected, a golden glow flashed in the depths of his eyes after he slightly opened his fiery eyes. He found Yuchi Kong in the distant sea region. Does this old fellow have a dog's nose? He's really sharp. He could actually wander around nearby and find the right place. Chapter 625. After the upheavals, the great seas hidden in the folded space were revealed. The Earth's oceans expanded by more than 100 times and could be considered boundless and boundless. Species flourished thousands of times in an instant. At this moment, the azure eastern sea rose and fell. The sun cast down a dazzling golden light that split apart with the waves. The surface of the sea was filled with dazzling fragments of gold. Chu Feng's eyes were cold. He walked silently under the sea and approached the target area with great caution. His bodily functions were restrained as he merged with the coral, seaweed, and other sceneries. There was a lush green bamboo boat on the surface of the sea. It was sparkling and translucent, but it was hidden in the void. Chu Feng wouldn't have been able to see it if he didn't have the fiery eyes. This was an ancient divine boat that could traverse the starry skies. Back in the day, there were powerhouses who had used it to traverse the cosmos and roam the outer realms. The bamboo boat was made of exquisite materials and carried a vigorous aura of life. It was still full of vigor and fresh leaves, and the green bamboo was sparkling and translucent. Yuchi Kong was calm and collected as he leisurely drank his tea. He was hiding and waiting for a creature to come out from the depths of the sea. Then, he would rise up and capture it. His breathing was steady. The breathing technique he had grasped was very profound, and a dense life force was spreading between his breaths. Facts have proven that only those who know how to endure can live a long life and laugh proudly to the end. Zhou Shang is a heavenly genius and possesses the innocuous divine physique. Moreover, he can restrain himself like this. He will emerge in the end and is worthy of being the Earth's true one. He revealed a faint smile and rather admired Zhou Shang. That was because, as a Tao protector, their fates were already tied together. He would rise along with the Earth's true one and obtain the recognition of the Earth's will. At that time, perhaps the legendary supreme primal chaos and mysterious yellow energies would descend and merge with him. It could be said that he and the Earth's true one, Zhou Shang, were bound together. Their fates had long since been linked together. He had already made his choice and wouldn't retreat. He believed that Zhou Shang would rise to become an overlord of the cosmos. As for Chu Feng, a cold expression appeared on his face when he thought of this name. He was somewhat angry but also somewhat contemptuous. From his point of view, Chu Feng didn't know what was good for him and had died a miserable death. Moreover, he hadn't even been willing to hand over the robbery induction breathing technique when he was alive. This caused them to go through a lot of trouble and repeatedly search for him. It's a bit of a pity. You're just a fake, but your strength is indeed shocking. To be able to cause such a ruckus, those who don't know would really think that you're the chosen one. However, you are destined to be a sacrificial pawn, serving the true one. Even if you don't die in the great battle of Kunlun, there will be a day when you will die in place of the true one. This is your destiny. Your path has long been foretold. Yuchi Kong's gaze was cold and detached. He also cared about Chu Feng's death, but it wasn't because he was sad. Rather, it was because he regretted that the clues leading to the robbery induction breathing technique might be lost. However, he firmly believed that it was impossible for there to be only one copy of the robbery induction breathing technique on Earth. He might be able to find a way to pry into it through the clues left behind by Chu Feng's parents or Chu Feng's belongings. A fake, nothing more than a sacrificial pawn. Although you're already dead, Mount Eternal is still troublesome. They've already been offended, and if they're allowed to grow, they'll become a disaster in the end. At this point, Yuchi Kong's gaze turned cold. He drank a mouthful of tea, narrowed his eyes, and stared at the misty waters. Chu Feng, you're a sacrificial pawn. You've left behind so much trouble even after your death. Just how can I obtain the robbery induction breathing technique for the true one? He put down the teacup and frowned. He had chased after the misty waters for many days, but he still couldn't see any hope. At this moment, directly below the surface of the sea facing the bamboo boat, Chu Feng's eyes were like black holes devouring all light. He wasn't using the fiery eyes at this moment because he was afraid of being sensed by Yuchi Kong. Instead, he was relying on his intuition to lock onto a position on the surface of the sea. The green bamboo boat was too strange. It could hide in the void and ordinary evolvers couldn't see it. The blade had long since been unsheathed and held in his hand. It was dark red in color and carried an old-fashioned and unadorned aura. One could tell at a glance that it was an antique, as if it hadn't been unsheathed for a very long time. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to see anything. It didn't emit any sharpness, nor was it surging with killing intent. It was extremely restrained. The almost rotten scabbard was carried on Chu Feng's back. That was the result of countless years of corrosion. Chu Feng had a suspicion that the soldiers on the path of reincarnation had existed for at least hundreds of thousands of years. He had come to this conclusion after consulting the photon computer's records and comparing them with their clothing. So much so that he was more inclined to believe that they had existed for more than 1,000,000 years. This also meant that this kind of dark red blade was exceptionally ancient. Even if it was standard issue, the fact that it could withstand the test of time for such a long time was still quite terrifying. Chu Feng was now a bit suspicious. The land of reincarnation wasn't naturally formed, and those soldiers weren't born there. The red spider lily had also denied reincarnation. He felt a chill run down his back when he thought of this. This scheme was somewhat big. Such a grand undertaking had already taken place over 1,000,000 years ago. Where were the participants now? Were they still alive? However, the land of reincarnation was still operating. There were still people holding black talismans waiting there to borrow the path to reincarnate. This in itself was a clear indication that the waters were too deep. At present, he still didn't have the power to investigate. Chu Feng had been lying dormant for a long time. The people above didn't sense him. He slowly moved, holding the dark red blade with both hands and pointing it upwards. At the same time, he bit the black talisman in his mouth. This thing could take him to the sky even in a place like the reincarnation road where flying was impossible. Now that he was outside, it could naturally increase his speed. Finally, Chu Feng attacked. He was like a specter. Without a sound, he soared into the sky and hacked at the back of Yuchi Kong's head with the dark red blade in his hand. All of his forbearance and dormancy had been for this moment. He completely erupted. Thinking of Yuchi Kong and the True One's faces, Chu Feng's killing intent boiled. They didn't stop even after his death and still wanted to hunt down his parents. The so-called True One's bloodline always wanted him to offer sacrifices. They didn't dare fight for their own fortunes. What right did they have to be the True One? This made him extremely disgusted. They dared to target his friends, family, and even the native evolvers of Earth, yet they didn't dare offend people from the outer realms. This filled Chu Feng with killing intent. He wanted to behead them as a warning to others. From his point of view, how could such people be called the Heaven's Chosen One? Cold and gloomy blade energy gushed out all of a sudden. In an instant, it turned from dim to resplendent like a scarlet river of stars, vast and boundless as it drowned the void. It had to be said that Yuchi Kong was too powerful. He was at least 2 realms higher than the visualization realm, yet he didn't panic in the face of danger. He sensed the sudden assassination and his whole body erupted with splendor. Behind him, dense runes appeared, all formed from energy. He knew an extremely powerful type of scripture. Divine protective light densely covered his body to protect his back. Yuchi Kong had personally participated in some of the processes of the fortunes obtained by Earth's true one Zhoushang. He had cultivated many of the divine arts and secret tomes left behind by the ancient forebears. Boom! It was as if immortal thunder had exploded from the 9 heavens, shaking the void. After this area was submerged by the scarlet blade light, a violent explosion occurred and surged with energy. In the blink of an eye, raging waves beat against the shore and swept high into the sky, scattering the clouds. Most importantly, the scarlet blade light rolled about like ravaging magma. It swept through the entire sea region and cut down all life. Yuchi Kong drew in a breath of cold air. He had already soared into the air. His speed was too fast, like a rock. His whole body was emitting golden runes as he evaded the fatal blow. Even so, his back had been cut open. His flesh was badly mangled, and there was a sparkling luster amidst the scarlet liquid. That was the result of the blade light. It had heavily injured him and caused him to lose a serious amount of blood essence. That was because the blade light from the land of reincarnation was very strange. After cutting the enemy open, it would actually devour the blood and forcefully deprive a person of their vitality. Unfortunately, it wasn't the blade that had personally touched the other party's body. It was only the blade light. Yuchi Kong's reaction was too fast. Roar! Yuchi Kong let out a furious roar. His expression was sinister, and his chest was heaving up and down violently. Ever since the upheavals, he had taken action many times in secret, but he had never suffered a loss. He had always helped the True One clear the obstacles with relative ease. Who would have thought that he would almost be cut in half today? With a rumble, he flew into a rage. Without the slightest hesitation, he swatted at Chu Feng with a palm. In the blink of an eye, his palm turned black and purple. This was the famous nether palm of ancient times. According to legend, it originated from a certain Een Lord. For a moment, black mist surged and the aura of the netherworld emerged. It was as if there was a vast underworld behind him. Countless dead spirits howled and pounced forward together. Bang! Chu Feng coughed up large mouthfuls of blood. He could clearly feel that the other party's realm was too high at such a close distance. It was possible that the other party was more than 2 realms above him. The vigorous energy smashed directly at him, making him feel as if he had been struck by lightning. His chest felt stuffy, and blood flowed out of his mouth and nose. He was wearing no less than 10 layers of armor on his body, all of which were premium products left behind by various divine sons. But in the blink of an eye, all 10 sets of armor had disintegrated into fragments and exploded one after the other. This old fellow was ridiculously powerful. Chu Feng felt as if he had been smashed by the war god's hammer. His whole body was in pain and his bones were creaking. Some of them had already been broken. But he didn't retreat. He slashed forward to meet the other party's nether palm head-on. The dark red blade advanced fearlessly. During this process, the 10 layers of spiritual armor on Chu Feng's body also exploded in the blink of an eye, torn apart by the invading energy. But at this time, Chu Feng's blade had also arrived in front of Yuchi Kong's palm. At first, Yuchi Kong was disdainful and wanted to break the blade, but he was, after all, an extraordinary person. The moment the simple blade approached, he suddenly withdrew his palm at the last moment. His whole body was horrified, and his hair stood on end as he quickly dodged backward. However, it was still a bit too late. The dark red blade's tip touched his finger and tore open a small wound. In the blink of an eye, Yuchi Kong's scalp went numb and his heart went cold. He felt as if he had lost a large chunk of his spiritual power. This blade was too fatal. He felt that part of his soul had been destroyed. Moreover, a strange energy was spreading up that finger and toward his palm, devouring his spirit. Damn it! He cried out furiously as he recalled a certain terrifying record. His entire old face turned deathly pale as he retreated rapidly. Chi. He was very decisive, ruthless to others and ruthless to himself. He used his other hand to cut off this palm at the wrist without so much as a frown. But the next moment, he was overwhelmed with shock. That was because a strand of strange energy had invaded his arm. He couldn't stop it in time. This is the reincarnation blade? How can this be? It should have been extinct for countless years. How can it appear again? This world is about to fall into chaos. The entire cosmos is about to be thrown into chaos. Yuchi Kong cried out strangely. That was because he had accidentally discovered a record when he was searching for ancient records with the Earth's true one. The reincarnation blade's appearance was a great calamity. There were even clues in the record that mentioned this cosmos was actually in ruins. There had once been a great upheaval, and the world was filled with endless slaughter. Soldiers wielding the reincarnation blade had appeared. So much so that the records speculated that this cosmos had already been destroyed. All the living creatures were ghosts, and the entire starry sky was the netherworld. During this brief moment of terror, Yuchi Kong had already taken action in advance. He cut off his entire arm and even removed his shoulder. He was incomparably ruthless toward himself. Chu Feng advanced once more. He brandished the standard blade and hacked forward. Crack! At this moment, the bronze mask on his face cracked open. It had suffered too much energy not long ago. Even if it wasn't the main point of the attack, it was now on the verge of disintegration. Chapter 626. Crack! A small piece of the bronze mask fell off, revealing a small part of Chu Feng's face. Yuchi Kong stared at him again and again, somewhat suspicious. The dark red blade was cold and threatening. The scarlet blade radiance was as brilliant as immortal clouds, like the reflection of a lake. Like a god of war in the sky, Chu Feng hacked forward with an indomitable will. Yuchi Kong had just suffered a great loss. He had severed his own arm and dislocated his shoulder. Half of his body was drenched in blood, and the pain was unbearable. Moreover, after recalling that record, he felt fear in his heart. He didn't dare face it head-on and retreated subconsciously. A cold smile appeared at the corners of Chu Feng's mouth. Just now, he had cut through the other party's gut. He was quite happy even though he was also heavily injured. He pressed forward without the slightest hesitation. At the same time, he put away the dark green bamboo boat beneath his feet and stuffed it into his spatial bracelet. Yuchi Kong was both shocked and furious. His transportation boat had been seized. Only now did he wake up from his fright, his expression cold and gloomy. But it was already too late. The divine boat had changed owners. The reason for this was that he had never imagined there would be someone on Earth who could injure him. He hadn't been prepared enough. He had been forced to sever his own arm the moment his finger was cut. At that time, he had fallen back and stood at the edge of the bamboo boat. Just now, he had been pressured by Chu Feng's blade. His heart was filled with fear, so he withdrew from the green bamboo boat. This was tantamount to surrendering to someone else. Evil creature, you dare? Yuchi Kong flew into a rage out of humiliation. He was, after all, a great expert who was vaguely the #1 expert on Earth. Yet, someone had actually stolen his green bamboo boat. This item had a great origin. Ancient experts had used it to traverse the universe, leaving behind many legends. At this moment, Chu Feng had donned 12 layers of armor in one go. His entire body was glowing with a myriad of colors, and all kinds of metallic armor were shining brilliantly. Additionally, his spiritual body had donned a dozen or so layers of armor, protecting him tightly. He might not have many other things, but when it came to armor and secret treasures, Chu Feng had a lot on him. He had sold so many divine sons and saintesses, but all of them had been stripped of their armor before being sold. He had too much stock. Then, Chu Feng brandished his saber and took the initiative to attack. Yuchi Kong was furious. He fell back to evade the reincarnation blade and looked at Chu Feng. The brat before him was clad in so many layers of armor that it was as though he was wearing a tortoise shell. A single slap wouldn't be enough to kill him. Under normal circumstances, his palm force was extremely powerful and surging with energy, enough to kill his opponent. However, he couldn't kill him with a single strike, and he was also wary of his opponent's long blade. Whoosh! Yuchi Kong dodged out of the way and evaded the edge of Chu Feng's blade. How could he possibly meet it head-on again after suffering such a great loss once? Boom! In the next moment, he attacked from the side. His body was like a ghost as he moved with extreme speed, slapping at the side of Chu Feng's body. His fingers were as black as ink, and the aura of the underworld rose sharply. Ghosts and gods wailed in front and behind him, indistinct and indistinct. There were even scenes of graveyards. Chu Feng left with a swoosh at an extremely fast speed. That was because this wasn't just the earth shrinking technique, but also the addition of the black talisman in his mouth. His speed was astonishing. Yuchi Kong was astonished. The other party was 2 major realms lower than him, yet he wasn't slower than him. "Hand over your life, old man!" shouted Chu Feng. After collecting Yuchi Kong's green bamboo boat, he felt much more at ease. The other party couldn't use this boat to jump through space, so there was no way for him to escape quickly. He didn't just want to injure this old fellow. His killing intent was born, and he wanted to cut down his opponent. Chi. The blade energy was like a rainbow, slapping over like a scarlet wave. The scene was grand and terrifying. Yuchi Kong's expression was gloomy. He opened his mouth and spat out a small pagoda that was as black as ink. It swayed in the wind and expanded rapidly, enveloping Chu Feng within it. Boom! Chu Feng didn't even think about it. He slashed out with his blade, and with a crack, the terrifying reincarnation blade cut the black pagoda apart. The metal fragments were blasted apart. Additionally, energy surged violently, and the Yin energy of the underworld engulfed everything like a storm. Chi. At the same time, the sword on Yuchi Kong's back was unsheathed with a dazzling cold light. He held it in his hand and swept it over. The sword energy stretched over 5 kilometers and could be considered hair-raising. This kind of sword radiance could easily cut through mountains and sever mountain ranges. Its energy was terrifying. At this moment, the sea was sinking under the pressure of the sword energy. Countless corpses appeared in the water. They were all sea beasts and fish, strangled to death by the terrifying sword intent. This was Yuchi Kong's terrifying aspect. The sword energy didn't directly slash at these creatures, but the killing intent alone was enough to kill the densely packed marine race members. Within moments, the entire area became silent. The sea beasts on the path of evolution had all fled, and the weaker ones had all been destroyed by the sword energy. Crack! The 18 shields in front of Chu Feng were split into 36 pieces. So many secret treasures had been pierced through by a single sword energy. The scene was truly terrifying. At this moment, Chu Feng was like a young man with many treasures. He had plundered the divine sons and saintesses and tossed them out without a care for his life. All of this was for the sake of killing Yuchi Kong. His own speed was very fast. He had already evaded after passing through the shield's obstruction. His feet glowed as he employed the earth shrinking technique. His mouth glowed with black light as the black talisman increased his agility. He moved like a phantom above the sea, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he found an opportunity to rush over and hack down with the reincarnation blade in hand. "Kill!" Yuchi Kong shouted. A golden seal flew out with a raise of his hand and rapidly enlarged. It came crashing down like a mountain peak. It was simply too large and filled the sky with golden light. It was boundlessly terrifying. Chu Feng's pupils constricted. He removed the diamond chakram from his wrist and smashed it out without hesitation. With a boom, it was as if the world was falling apart. Faint threads appeared on the diamond chakram and specks of luster appeared. This greatly increased its momentum and dazzled the eyes. It was as heavy as a star with astonishing runes flickering on it. Boom! The mountain-like golden seal immediately exploded after being struck. The scene was simply too shocking. It was as if a sun had exploded and energy surged. White mist filled the sky above the sea. Who knew how much water had been evaporated? In a short moment, the ocean's bottom was almost visible and the corals were all exposed. Roar! Chu Feng let out a loud roar. The diamond chakram had been exposed. If Yuchi Kong could see it clearly, he would most likely guess his identity. He launched a fatal attack without hesitation, wanting to fight to the death with this person. He circulated the robbery induction breathing technique and activated the black talisman in his mouth, causing the runes on it to flourish even more intensely. This caused his speed to increase sharply. He arrived in the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint and slash down with the reincarnation blade. Crack! At the same time, the mask on Chu Feng's face finally broke into pieces and fell off, revealing his true appearance. What? It's really you? Yuchi Kong cried out as if he had seen a ghost. His face was full of astonishment. The person he had long since regarded as a dead loser had actually returned alive and appeared before his eyes. How heaven-defying was this? Could it be that even the purgatory couldn't bury him or trap him? The news released by the damning Pure Land was actually false, especially since he had always been partial to the True One and bound his fate with Zhou Shang's. Now that he saw Chu Feng return in one piece, his heart was greatly shaken. Who was the True One and who was the False One if he didn't die in such a situation? In a flash, his heart throbbed and his willpower wavered. Then, he felt a wave of panic. Had he made the wrong choice? Chi. The reincarnation blade was like a rainbow as it hacked around him. He had long since lost an arm and half his body was covered in blood. There was no way he could resist or evade. Boom. However, this time, he hadn't expected a six-colored flame to explode in front of him. The scene was terrifying. It was as if the six-colored flames had fused into one, causing one's spirit to tremble. Apparently, Chu Feng had brought out the flames of reincarnation from the stone box without the slightest hesitation. Now that he had been exposed, all he could do was kill Yuchi Kong to silence him. He cut off all means of retreat and used all means at his disposal. The six-colored flames suddenly exploded. Yuchi Kong couldn't evade in time, and all the weapons and treasures he had brought out were melted and destroyed in the sea. Even though he was extremely fast and had managed to escape, he was still swept by a wisp of flame. He screamed miserably and his face turned deathly pale. He was incomparably terrified. This is the flames of reincarnation? He was overwhelmed, even more horrified than when he had seen the reincarnation blade. The six-colored flame was extremely shocking. It was much more powerful than the blue flame Chu Feng and Qin Luoyin had encountered. Just a single wisp was enough to cripple Yuchi Kong's left leg. He was extremely decisive and ruthless. With a slash of his sword, the charred leg below the knee fell off and turned into ashes in the air. Moreover, he had lost a portion of his spiritual power. Chu Feng's heart trembled. Without the stone box, he certainly wouldn't have been able to come into contact with the six-colored flame. Now, it seemed that he and Qin Luoyin had only encountered the blue flame. It could be considered incomparably lucky. Damn it, you little evil creature, your life is truly tenacious. Yuchi Kong went mad. He had lost an arm and a leg in succession and had never suffered such a serious injury. He felt extremely sullen in his heart. He was clearly very powerful, yet he had lost an arm and a leg. This was unbearable. Roar. He was like a mad beast. His roar shook the vast ocean until the waves slapped the sky and scattered the clouds in the sky. His hair stood up in anger and his eyes were cold. He was like a divine lion as he frantically unleashed his wondrous arts to kill Chu Feng. At this moment, Yuchi Kong's movements around Chu Feng were too fast. He left behind countless afterimages as the air exploded. Palm blades, sword intent, fist seals, and secret treasures covered the sky and earth as they bombarded toward Chu Feng. Even though Chu Feng's speed was just as terrifying, he still couldn't evade some of the attack. After all, there was a difference of two major realms. The Black Talisman only increased his speed and didn't increase it to a fixed realm. The 12 layers of armor on Chu Feng's body exploded as blood blossomed from his body. Some places had been penetrated by the fist seals, and one could see his white bones. Meeting such an old monster was simply too bitter. Chu Feng waved his hand and the stone box withdrew a portion of the six-colored flame. He once again activated it and donned many layers of heavy armor to protect himself. Moreover, this time, he locked onto the other party and charged forward while withstanding the terrifying light of the secret technique. The reincarnation flame was extremely terrifying. It destroyed Yuchi Kong's secret treasure and, most importantly, disrupted his attacking rhythm. Chu Feng made use of his extreme speed and suddenly hurled out a long blade. It flew out like a waterfall, cut open the energy barrier, and made contact with Yuchi Kong's body. This horrified Yuchi Kong. The reincarnation blade was too strange and made him apprehensive, even terrified. This time, he had been hit once again. To be more precise, it was a small cut on his abdomen. The wound actually wasn't deep, but he still cut himself with a sudden slash, cutting open his abdomen and digging out a large piece of flesh. He couldn't help but let out a mournful howl toward the sky. "Little bastard, I'm going to tear you into 10,000 pieces." He roared in extreme anger and was filled with regret. He felt that he should have killed Chu Feng earlier and seized the robbery induction breathing technique. He should have ended things completely. Who would have thought that he would suffer so much today? He had been attacked by an abandoned child to the point where even his body was damaged. At the same time, Yuchi Kong's eyes were cold as he roared. He used his spiritual energy in an attempt to seize the blade. After all, it was Chu Feng who had thrown it out of the blue. Then, he felt great hatred because there was a multicolored rope tied to the hilt of the blade. This was a secret treasure of an even higher level than the spirit-binding rope, surpassing the visualization realm. It was Qin Luoyin's belt, which had been looted by Chu Feng during the decisive battle on Mount Kunlun. Chu Feng had used this item as his belt. Today, it was quite useful, locking up the reincarnation blade and bringing it back in an instant. "Old man, let's see how long you can hold out," Chu Feng said coldly. The other party had lost an arm and a leg, and now his entire abdomen had been hollowed out. The price he had paid was too great. His vitality had been greatly damaged, and his strength had fallen sharply. At the same time, Chu Feng crushed a six-path reincarnation pill as if he were eating candy. He had many divine pills on him, so he didn't care in the slightest. In the blink of an eye, his entire body flourished with golden light. His blood energy surged, and the vitality in his body flourished like the ocean. He gripped the reincarnation blade with both hands and charged forward. Yuchi Kong's expression was gloomy. He was humiliated, angry, and furious. In the end, he turned around and left. Even though he wanted nothing more than to hack Chu Feng into 1,000 pieces, he felt that the best choice after calming down was to leave and recuperate. Otherwise, he might really die here. However, he found that he couldn't shake off Chu Feng at all. He had been running away the whole time, but the brat behind him was biting a black talisman and was even a bit faster than him. This caused a heavy haze to appear in his heart. His soul was palpitating, and he felt that things were far from good. Along the way, they stopped and fought continuously. Fresh blood splashed out from time to time. Chu Feng had sustained serious injuries, but the effects of the six-path reincarnation pill were still present. Very soon, the bone-deep wounds were healed. Boom! All of a sudden, Chu Feng tossed out 2 violet heavenly thunder crystals. These weren't ordinary treasures. They came from the damning Pure Land and were buried by Qin Luoyin in the purgatory for Chu Feng. They were simply too powerful. In the blink of an eye, the sea boiled and the seawater evaporated. Thunder and lightning interweaved as flames surged to the sky. Yuchi Kong let out a blood-curdling scream. His body was drenched in blood, and one of his arms had been blown away. His body had almost been broken into 2. Chu Feng had only used it at the last moment. It had taken the enemy by surprise and produced an excellent effect. As expected, he had inflicted heavy injuries on the other party. One had to know that Qin Luoyin herself was an entire realm above the visualization realm. The trump card she had brought from the damning Pure Land naturally wasn't just for killing opponents of the same level. Now Yuchi Kong had almost lost his life. Little bastard, you're truly vicious. We're both of the same bloodline. Are you going to kill me? Yuchi Kong shouted with disheveled hair. Old man, you still have the face to say that? Let's not talk about your previous attitude toward me. After I died in battle at Mount Kunlun, you actually wanted to kill my friends and capture my parents. You're so peaceful toward those from the outer realms, yet you're turning your butcher's knife against your own people. Are you worthy of saying such things to me? Zhou Shang is the true one. I'm doing this for the sake of the bigger picture. It's more appropriate for you to give him the breathing technique. He's a innocuous divine physique. You should help him rise to power for the sake of this planet. Yuchi Kong spat out a mouthful of blood. Get lost, true one. A coward hiding in the back waiting to be fed, a person waiting to take advantage of others, someone who needs me to provide him with a breathing technique. How can he be called the true one? I think you're old and muddled. You're tied to his interests, aren't you? What dogs hit true one? I don't believe in heresy. If he dares appear before me, I'll destroy him with one hand. I'll let you see how the so-called abandoned one slaughters the true one like a dog. You. Yuchi Kong was both shocked and furious. At the same time, he was somewhat terrified. He naturally felt a lack of confidence when he thought of Chu Feng's combat strength. That was because Chu Feng wasn't an innocuous divine physique, yet he was just as terrifying. Being able to return alive from the purgatory was incomparably heaven-defying in itself. He had even brought back the reincarnation blade. This frightened Yuchi Kong even more, and he felt a chill from the depths of his heart. Kill. Chu Feng attacked with the long blade in his hand, leaving behind a field of blade radiance as he slashed forward. Pft, pft, pft. Later on, Yuchi Kong let out a blood-curdling scream as he was struck once again. He had cut off one of his legs, and his entire person was incomparably miserable. He was furious after his buttocks were struck by the blade, but he still cut off half of his body and fled frantically. You still want to run? Chu Feng sneered. The other party's speed had dropped by a large margin, and he was able to catch up to him. He directly cut off his shoulder with a slash, and blood sprayed everywhere. No. Yuchi Kong let out a mournful cry. How could he still cut himself off like this? Would he only have a head left? It's better if I help you. Chu Feng used his fist seals this time and directly blasted him from the neck down, turning him into a bloody mist. Only his head was left. Yuchi Kong knew he couldn't live, but he was quite ruthless. His head flew through the air and crashed toward Chu Feng, about to explode. You want to die happily? That's too easy on you. I'll decide your life and death. Be annihilated under the reincarnation blade. Chapter 627. Yuchi Kong cried out in fear. The sound waves of his spirit reverberated, and were incomparably mournful. He felt his soul being annihilated and rapidly corroded before vanishing into thin air. This was the end of both body and soul. Nothing would be left after death. Not to mention the legendary reincarnation, even his traces in this world would be erased. Not even bone dregs would be left. This was the reincarnation blade, capable of severing reincarnation, slaying the body and killing the soul. Yuchi Kong's spirit trembled as he thought of the ancient records. He was on the verge of collapse, terrified to the extreme. He struggled with all his might, but it was to no avail. He was about to completely disappear from this world. Chu Feng was cold and emotionless. He held the dark red blade in his hand as he looked forward. 4 or 5 weapons had actually fallen out of the cleaved head. They were all small swords, spears, and dagger axes. They were all weapons that could only be controlled by the spirit, but they had all been shattered by the reincarnation blade. "I hate this," Yuchi Kong screamed. He really didn't want to die. He still wanted to rise up with the Earth's true one and see the brilliance of the universe. He hadn't obtained the primal chaos purple chi and mysterious yellow mother chi from the Earth's will, so he hoped to look down on the entire starry sky one day. "Why?" he howled mournfully. Chu Feng glared at him but didn't feel like paying attention. This person was still unrepentant and didn't deserve any sympathy. At the last moment, Yuchi Kong was terrified to the extreme. He truly regretted tying himself to the same chariot as Zhou Shang and sinking too deeply into it. In the final radiance of the setting sun, he looked at Chu Feng, his spirit trembling. The young man before him gave him the feeling of an ancient demonic mountain. His surging blood energy and flourishing yang energy caused his will to collapse. He knew that even if this person didn't have the innocuous divine physique, he wouldn't fear the various legendary physiques that had appeared recently. He was destined to set off perilous waves and become a legend. Even the purgatory couldn't trap or bury him. What place could stop him? How could he be the false one? How could he be the abandoned one? In the blink of an eye, Yuchi Kong was vexed, remorseful, and all sorts of negative emotions entangled together. He knew that he was too prejudiced and blinded by greed. He thought that Zhou Shang was invincible the moment he saw the innocuous divine physique. On such a recovering planet, there was no such thing as a true chosen one. The so-called true one and false one were just sayings. The survival of the fittest, and the winner was king. Nothing was destined. He laughed bitterly. No matter how terrifying the so-called innocuous divine physique was in the rumors, if he was killed, he would be nothing more than a speck of dust. It was somewhat laughable for him to view him as the true one ahead of time. At this moment, he thought of many things. Naturally, he thought of Yao Yao because Chu Feng was someone Yao Yao thought highly of. Do I want to prove that I have better foresight than Princess Yao Yao? What a joke! What kind of constitution hadn't Princess Yao Yao seen before? It could even be said that he had killed every single one of them. He had killed the winged divine body, the origin magnetic sacred body, and the innocuous divine body back then. I view the innocuous divine body as a rare treasure, but perhaps she views it as nothing more than a blade of grass on the side of the road. Is it a matter of vision? Before his death, Yuchi Kong's thoughts were multitudinous. All of a sudden, countless thoughts emerged in his mind. He was filled with boundless remorse, but it was all too late. His split head had already turned into a bloody mist, and his bones had turned into ashes. All traces of him in this world were about to be completely erased. The reincarnation blade. Yuchi Kong let out a loud cry in the end. He was incomparably and exceptionally terrified. Then, he was filled with boundless trembling as he said, "We are all ghosts, but I'm one step further. I'm completely annihilated and erased from this world. What a vast netherworld. I see it. How laughable. Everyone in this world lives in the netherworld, but they are all ghosts. I see the scene reflected by the reincarnation blade. Ah! He had gone crazy. He screamed with all his might in his final moments, and his spirit fluctuated violently. Be on your way. Chu Feng had been staring at that annihilated spirit all along. Although he wanted to hear more, he knew that Yuchi Kong was completely done for. He had already gone crazy, and his destruction was imminent. Bang! Chu Feng punched out one last time, and the last wisp of Yuchi Kong's spirit exploded. It was completely destroyed, and all traces of it were erased from this world. Brother, you're too powerful. You finished off that old clapper just like that? The Black Yak and the others had been chasing all the way. They were panting heavily as they arrived at this place. Their eyes were filled with astonishment and astonishment. One had to know that Yuchi Kong was too powerful. He was invincible in his green bamboo boat. Yellow Cattle and Ouyang Feng had suffered greatly when they fought against him in their dilapidated boat. They were almost killed by him. Brother, well done. You finally killed that old bastard. How delightful! The Manchurian Tiger, Old Donkey, and the others were excited. Even Zhou Quan and the great demons of Kunlun had rushed to this place. They were simply too worried that something would happen to Chu Feng. All of them were prepared to fight with their lives on the line. If Chu Feng wasn't a match and couldn't escape, they would also fight a bloody battle and charge forward with all their might. Brother, are you all right? Zhou Quan supported him. I'm fine. I'll be fine after a day of rest. But that old bastard is really powerful. Chu Feng coughed up a mouthful of blood. He had taken a great risk in killing Yuchi Kong this time. He himself had almost met with misfortune and was now gravely injured. The Black Yak nodded and said, "He's not just powerful. He's so powerful that it's unreasonable. That old bastard must be a monster from a secret realm. He must have cultivated for a very long time. Otherwise, it's impossible for him to have such accomplishments." The group of people felt some lingering fear. It was too dangerous just now. If they had been the slightest bit careless, Chu Feng might have been killed by the Earth's True One's protector. If that happened, all of them would regret it for the rest of their lives and wouldn't be able to accept it. Even after the battle ended, they were still short of breath and had lingering fears. They were too nervous just now and feared that something bad would happen to Chu Feng. Brother, you can't take such risks in the future. You've just returned from purgatory and you're fighting so hard. Just now, our hearts were in our throats, the Black Yak said with a solemn expression. At this time, the old Grandmaster of Mount Wudong also stepped forward and said solemnly, "With your talents, you'll definitely be able to kill Yuchi Kong after a period of cultivation. It's too risky to take action so early. Even if you don't think for yourself, you have to think for the people around you. You're not fighting alone now. You've already formed a group with a group of friends with you as their leader. If something were to happen to you, they won't have it easy either." Senior is right. Chu Feng nodded. He had great respect for Wu Qifeng. Back when he was still weak, the old Grandmaster had risked his life to protect him many times and treated him sincerely. Chu Feng had always respected his opinion. Hee-haw, we've finally killed that old monster. Hee-haw, we've finally killed that old monster. The whole world is celebrating. This is a joyous occasion. Let's go back and celebrate. Motherf *Ker, he's the first one who dared to block the entrance of Mount Eternal to kill us. He's finally gone to hell. No, he should be thoroughly dead. He won't even be able to see the King of Hell. As soon as the old donkey opened his mouth, everyone wanted to beat him up. He was taking advantage of others by crying out for no reason. Chu Feng grimaced. He had broken at least 20 bones in the course of the battle, and some parts had been pierced through by Yuchi Kong's fists. His flesh was transparent from front to back and dripping with blood. If it wasn't for the effects of the 6 paths of reincarnation pill, he might not have been able to hold on. Fortunately, the battle was over and many of his wounds were healing. Chu Feng used the stone box to carefully collect the brightly colored flames and closed the lid. This thing couldn't spread because its destructive power was too great. It would be a big problem if it were to leak out. He found the diamond chakram and wore it on his wrist. Finally, he stroked the dark red blade. It was all thanks to this blade that he wouldn't have been able to kill Yuchi Kong otherwise. The Black Yak and the others were staring with fiery gazes. Even the old Lama of Kunlun was wearing a golden monastic robe. He put his palms together and sighed. This blade is truly extraordinary. It's a necessary weapon for home travel. Everyone's gazes were awed. This old monk had always been dignified and was an accomplished monk. He was actually able to say such words. It was rare. He was sitting on a golden lion that used to be the old Lion King. Its entire body was resplendent with golden light. They were like the mounts of the Buddhist race. Yes, this blade's origins are a bit frightening, but it's not unique. It's a standard and there's a batch of them. Sigh, I'm a bit regretful. I should have made a few more back then, but I didn't dare take too many for fear of causing trouble on the reincarnation path. Chu Feng sighed. He regretted not making a few more. That way, he could have brought them out and given them to Old Black, Yellow Cattle, the Old Donkey, Wu Qifeng, and the others. What kind of scene would it be if everyone had one? Let's talk about it when the opportunity arises. When I go to the ghost town to practice my fist technique and comprehend the Tao a step further, I'll definitely go to the reincarnation path and help each of you get one. Everyone jumped in fright. They told him not to act recklessly. They had already heard Chu Feng's introduction of the purgatory situation. It was truly too dangerous. After experiencing the crushing of the millstone, even saints were turned into bloody paste. That wasn't a place the living could stay in. It was practically the netherworld. It was too crazy to cause a ruckus on the reincarnation path. It was fine if they didn't have this kind of reincarnation blade. They were truly afraid that Chu Feng would act impulsively and try to seize the blade again. If an accident happened, there would truly be no medicine for regret. Don't worry, I never do things I'm not sure of. I won't go for a while. Chu Feng nodded. He also understood that that place was too sinister and not a good place. Without the stone box, not to mention him, even saints would die inside. That ghost town and the reincarnation path weren't prepared for the living at all. At the same time, the only crack in the void between the purgatory's space and the outside world was excessively terrifying. It hid a gargantuan oddity. The ancient mine there was too frightening. Even the powerhouses of countless years ago had died miserably. Some people were even scared to death. It was too horrifying. When Chu Feng walked that path with the stone box in hand, an accident had almost happened. This made him extremely fearful. 2 days later, Chu Feng had cultivated to his peak state at Mount Eternal. His broken bones and the bloody holes on his body had all healed and grown back. I'm going to Kunlun to chop the Earth's true one to death, Chu Feng said as he prepared to set off. Everyone was speechless. No matter what, he was still a visualization realm expert. Moreover, he could look down on all the divine sons and saintesses in the universe. Now, he actually opened his mouth and said the word, chop. It was too unrestrained. Cough, as expected of my brother. The Black Yak let out a dry cough because many people were looking at him. They felt that Chu Feng had been infected by him. In the past, he was a big hoodlum like a gangster boss. The old Grandmaster Wu Qifeng frowned and said, "There's news that the proud sons of heaven are fighting for supremacy at Kunlun. All kinds of peerless physiques have appeared one after another. They're fighting to the death with Ingwudi, the Tao Child, Yuan Shicheng, the young Buddha, and the others. It's exceptionally dangerous to enter the home of myriad gods. I want to meet those people and see how powerful they are." Chu Feng spoke bluntly. He also told them to wait for Yellow Cattle and Ouyang Feng to come out of seclusion before going. They shouldn't take the risk now. Chu Feng moved first and entered the home of myriad gods. He coveted that place because it allowed the strongest descendants of the 10 great planets to fight for supremacy. There were bound to be great benefits there. In the end, Chu Feng set off and headed straight for Kunlun. He wanted to win against the various proud sons of heaven and peerless physique. He wanted to be the first to enter the home of myriad gods and fight for the great fortune that belonged to this planet. At the same time, in the starry sky, the Saint of Damning Pure Land was also informing Qin Luoyin that she could set off to Kunlun to fight for a supreme fortune. Chapter 6:28. In the Eastern Sea, the rising sun leapt out of the sea and gushed out endless golden brilliance, dyeing the entire sea with a bit of brilliance and holiness. A green bamboo boat cut through the clear and crystalline surface of the sea, leaping high into the sky and rushing toward land. However, no one could see it. This was an ancient boat that had once been used by ancient powerhouses as a means of transportation. It had traversed the boundless sea of stars in ancient times. Now it had fallen into Chu Feng's hands. This was his spoil of war from Yuchi Kong and also his greatest harvest from that battle. In fact, Chu Feng had also suffered great losses. Not to mention serious injuries, he had lost dozens of Saint Child armors in that battle, all because of the great difference in level. Chu Feng gradually understood the emerald green bamboo boat after fumbling around for a while. He revealed a delighted expression because this was indeed a rare treasure. Now, he was tearing through the sky and saw many evolvers along the way, some native and some from the outer realms. However, they all ignored him because the boat could be hidden in the void. Swoosh! He used his spiritual energy to control the boat and make a special rune on it glow. It began to warp through space, disappearing from its original spot and appearing thousands of kilometers away. During this process, the green bamboo boat glowed and formed a light screen that wrapped around Chu Feng, protecting him from disintegration during the warp. What a good treasure! It's a must-have for home and travel. Chu Feng was overjoyed and couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. If this was used in conjunction with the reincarnation blade, he could travel thousands of kilometers after one attack. Who could stop him? Chu Feng experimented repeatedly, pouring energy into the runes on the green bamboo boat. Depending on the strength of one's spiritual energy, one could control the distance of the warp, which was proportional to the amount of energy. At the same time, he realized that if he was strong enough, it wouldn't be a problem to use this boat to cross the universe and tear open a super wormhole. However, with his current strength, one warp could only cover a few tens of thousands of kilometers at most. Swoosh! After adjusting his position, Chu Feng estimated how far he was from Mount Zhongnan. He and the bamboo boat disappeared and warped once again, appearing in Shangxi with a swoosh. He came here to find someone to settle a score. Because he wasn't very familiar with it, he made some mistake. Although he was close to Mount Zhongnan, he was still more than 100 li away. This was already a pleasant surprise for Chu Feng, and he felt pretty good about it. From then on, he could teleport from one part of the earth to another with just a thought. When the world first changed, he had come into contact with a flying saucer and wanted to use it to conquer the East in an hour. Now, it seemed that not only could this wish be realized, but the time needed was also greatly shortened. However, in the end, they didn't rely on black technology like flying saucers. Instead, they relied on a green bamboo boat with fresh leaves growing on it. It was a very primitive, ancient handmade product. He was speechless. This was a comparison between two different civilization systems. This time, he didn't bring the Netherworld cat. Instead, he suppressed it in Mount Eternal and prepared to use the restrictions there to subdue the cat demon. He wanted it to become a powerful fighter for Yellow Cattle, Big Blackie, and the others. Now, he had come alone and was ready to settle a score with the Netherworld cat's sworn brother, Wan Jianxing. Last time, he had failed, so he didn't know if he would be able to find the main character this time. Wang Jianxing was ranked 19th among the universe's younger generation. His strength was extremely terrifying and powerful. Together with the innocuous divine physique, he wanted to capture Chu Feng's parents and obtain the robbery induction breathing technique. Chu Feng steered the green bamboo boat. He slowed down and floated into the ancestral court of Taoism, Mount Zhongnan. The atmosphere here was extraordinary. Clouds and mist lingered around the place, giving it the atmosphere of an immortal. The energy here was extremely dense, and some of the mountain peaks were sparkling and translucent. At a glance, one could tell that this was a divine land. Mount Zhongnan was a section of the Qinling Mountains in Shaanxi. It was verdant all year round, and the terrain was dangerous and the road was rugged. Along the way there were gurgling creeks, surging waterfalls, and gorgeous immortal clouds. This was one of the most important famous mountains on Earth, and was known as the #1 blessed land in the world. Chu Feng had arrived. Along the way, he passed through the rustling pines of the mountain forest and passed by the dense creek. He saw a few mutants, such as demons that had evolved from giant salamanders. Before long, Chu Feng smiled. He saw an especially powerful evolver in this area. It was actually a national treasure, the panda. This fellow was too lazy. He was lying in a bamboo forest and was snoring away. There was a wine jar beside him, and he looked very comfortable. If it was any other day, Chu Feng would have gone over to observe this national treasure. It was rare to see an especially powerful one, and he felt that it wasn't any weaker than the Mastiff King of Kunlun. But he wasn't in the mood for leisure now. He was preparing to go to Kunlun, and he was only passing by here to collect debts. Oh, he's back? Chu Feng was shaken. He had sensed a few powerful auras near the main peak of Mount Zhongnan, and two of them were especially prominent. On the main peak, the clouds were rising and golden light was overflowing. There were faint sounds of wind and thunder, accompanied by scriptures. But no one had been able to ascend it, because the seal there hadn't been completely undone. But on a mountain near the main peak, the energy was extremely dense. Mist lingered in the air, and it was already like a fairyland. There were some people there who weren't ordinary. In particular, there were two people, one tall and one short, wearing a cloak. Even though Chu Feng's eyes revealed a wisp of golden light, he couldn't see through them. How strange! Chu Feng was astonished. Although he hadn't used his fiery eyes to its fullest, the other party's cloak was able to block a wisp of golden light from the depths of his eyes. At such a close distance, he couldn't use his fiery eyes to its fullest for fear of being sensed. Even though the tall cloaked person was reserved, Chu Feng still felt that this person was extremely powerful. In addition, there was an old man beside the short cloaked person who also had outstanding strength. He could vaguely sense that he was an expert surpassing the visualization realm. Chu Feng trembled. The current Earth had become dangerous. Evolvers who had surpassed the visualization realm were no longer just a few, but rather quite a few. He sized up the mountains and sighed inwardly. The changes on Earth had advanced by leaps and bounds during his disappearance. No wonder the Descenders were becoming more and more powerful. He discovered that these people were very casual. They entered and exited the Taoist temple as if they had returned home and then sat in meditation to rest. Even if it's not Wang Jianxing, they should know him and have a cooperative relationship, right? It seems they're quite familiar with this place. Chu Feng guessed. At the same time, he was envious because he saw the main peak of Mount Zhongnan. There were tens of thousands of layers of golden light and the sound of scriptures could be heard continuously. At a glance, he could tell that there were good things there. If they were really going to be unsealed, he couldn't help but want to kill his way up. The world's #1 paradise certainly didn't lack divine medicines. The most famous ancient breathing techniques and wondrous techniques were definitely on the main peak. Then, Chu Feng couldn't help but make his move. He steered the bamboo boat and stealthily moved over. He held the diamond chakram in one hand and an extra-large golden lightning hammer in the other. His main targets were the old man surpassing the visualization realm and the tall cloaked person. However, the old man suddenly left as if he had something to do. He had left the mountain in a hurry. Chu Feng smiled. This couldn't be better. There was only one main target left, which was much more stable. Buzz. He produced a domain and wanted to trap and kill the tall cloaked person. In truth, this person's reactions were exceptionally sharp. He had sensed danger and dodged in advance. But Chu Feng had observed him for a long time. He saw that he was left-handed and deduced the person's daily habits, so he could predict the direction in which he would dodge. In a flash, the diamond chakram flew out. Chu Feng carefully controlled his strength and made it erupt with boundless light. The terrifying energy blasted toward the tall cloaked person. At such a close distance, they would be able to touch each other even if they pounced forward. Naturally, it would be difficult to miss. But this person's movement technique was too strange. Like an illusory flower, he moved his body horizontally at the critical moment and evaded. It was too amazing. Chu Feng was astonished. This kind of method far surpassed that of ordinary powerful evolvers. This kind of divine instinct made even him sigh in admiration. One had to know that he was hiding in the void and had suddenly attacked while the cloaked person was unprepared. The cloaked person didn't even see what weapon was attacking him. Following which, he spun around like a top and was about to fly away with an inconceivable movement technique to escape this vortex. Boom! Chu Feng's palm glowed as he brandished the golden thunder hammer and smashed down fiercely, sealing off all paths of retreat. In the blink of an eye, Chu Feng pushed his cultivation to 120% and went all out. It would be too shameful if he couldn't even take down a single person with a sneak attack. One had to know that he had even eliminated Yuchi Kong not long ago. Boom. However, this person's identity was too ethereal. She was like the reincarnation of a banished immortal, elegant and otherworldly. Like a dancing fairy, she brushed past the golden hammer and evaded it. She was about to escape this terrifying energy vortex. How strange! Chu Feng was astonished. Even he was shaken. This kind of reaction and innate divine instinct wasn't any weaker than his own. His reaction was too timely and perfect. But at this moment, the golden hammer in Chu Feng's hand was accompanied by thunder and lightning. The cloaked person couldn't evade it no matter what. Crack! The electric radiance struck his body and immediately caused him to stiffen. Following which, Chu Feng smashed down fiercely with the golden hammer without the slightest bit of hesitation. With a bang, it landed on her head. This was truly a 5-blow thunderstruck. The 5-colored lightning erupted and caused the person's body to sway as the energy radiance above his head surged. This person was wearing an unimaginable secret treasure. At the very least, that cloak was out of the ordinary and could actually block most of the lightning's corrosion. However, he was still affected in the end. His body shook violently and became increasingly stiff. Bang bang bang! Chu Feng didn't say anything and smashed 3 more times at the person's head. Since it was an ambush from the back, these 3 blows landed on the back of the person's head. At this moment, the cloak finally shattered, revealing a head of shining silver hair. This astonished Chu Feng. It was actually a woman. Previously, her whole body had been wrapped in the cloak. However, since he had already made his move, he couldn't stop at this time. He still aimed at the back of her head. Amidst her waterfall-like silver hair, there were extremely dazzling ornaments that erupted with runes to help block the attack. However, Chu Feng's strength was too great. After smashing 8 times in one breath, the runes were finally shattered and her body swayed. In the end, her eyes rolled back and she fainted. During this process, Chu Feng didn't even see her true appearance. Everything happened too quickly and was completed in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint. A normal person wouldn't even be able to finish a sentence before this kind of sneak attack ended. Beside him, the short cloaked person screamed with a tender voice. This was actually a little Lolita. She wanted to escape and tilted her head, wanting to remember Chu Feng's appearance. In the end, she saw a person wearing a bronze mask suddenly stretch out from the void, carrying a golden hammer. He chased after her and smashed down with the hammer, knocking her unconscious. It was much easier to deal with this little Lolita. Then, Chu Feng was a bit dumbfounded because he felt that this little Lolita was a bit familiar. Her silver hair was sparkling and emitting a gentle radiance. Her small face was absolutely beautiful, and her large eyes were closed. Her long eyelashes were trembling, and she would wake up at any moment. This little fellow was too beautiful, so beautiful that it was a bit excessive. Chu Feng was suspicious. In the end, he suddenly came to a realization. He finally knew who she was and immediately felt a headache coming on. Wasn't this the extremely popular little Lolita on the Origin Beast platform? Her name was Ying Xiaoxiao, and she came from the quasi-immortal race. This race was one of the strongest races in the universe and was known as one of the top 10 that had never changed since ancient times. Her brother was Ying Wudi. His strength was terrifying and he was fighting with the Tao Child, Young Buddha, and Origin Magnetic Sacred Physique. Her sister was known as the third most beautiful woman in her generation under the starry skies. Her reputation was incomparably great. I hit the wrong person. It's not Wan Jianxing, but why are they so familiar with this place? They treat it like their own home. Isn't this Wan Jianxing's territory? Chu Feng looked at this silver-haired little Lolita, and then looked at the tall silver-haired woman he had knocked unconscious on the ground. He still hadn't seen her face until now. He hesitated for a moment because he had obviously hit the wrong person. Moreover, the little Lolita's identity had been confirmed. He reckoned that he didn't need to think too much to guess the identity of the silver-haired woman on the ground. Chu Feng was speechless and speechless. He had knocked down the third most beautiful woman in her generation under the starry skies? Then, he lowered his head and looked again. There was a big bump on the back of the silver-haired beauty's head. It was a bit exaggerated and looked like a big steamed bun. Moreover, it was bleeding. This made him feel very guilty because he had smashed the quasi-immortal race's princess miserably for no reason at all. He looked at the extra-large golden hammer in his hand. Just now, he had swung it with all his might. From start to finish, he had hit it more than 10 times. Chapter 629. On the ground, the two beauties, one big and one small, were very peaceful and quiet. Both of them were lying there with their graceful curves showing off their astonishing looks. The silver-haired little Lolita had red lips and white teeth. Her eyes were especially big, but unfortunately they were closed at the moment. Her eyelashes were especially long, and her body was sparkling and lustrous like a fairy. As for the elder sister, her figure was slender and exceptionally outstanding. She was even taller than the average man. Although she was lying on the ground and hadn't revealed her true appearance, her snow-white arms and the graceful curves of her body made it clear that she was a breathtaking beauty. Chu Feng recited his sins. Then, with a solemn expression on his face, he began a sacred ceremony in his heart, and that was to rob. He started with the elder sister because this great beauty had too many good things on her body. First of all, the ornament on her head could actually resist the golden lightning hammer. However, some of the hairpins were ruined by the extra-large golden hammer and were already smashed into pieces. A hairpin was still sparkling and translucent. It was unknown what material it was made of, but it actually absorbed 90% of the thunder and lightning on the hammer in Chu Feng's hand just now. This thing's defensive power was extremely shocking. Otherwise, half of this peerless beauty from the quasi-saint race would have been charred and her hair would have stood up from the electric current. Chu Feng picked it up, looked at it carefully, and then put it away. Then, he deftly and skillfully pulled off the ornament on Ingzhixian's earlobe. It was an earring that was as brilliant as the stars. It glistened brightly, and could actually form a divine light to protect both sides of the head when it was gently shaken. Good stuff. Chu Feng didn't care whether he could use it or not. He would take it off first. A pair of snow-white earlobes had a sparkling luster. It could be said to be absolutely beautiful and bewitching. It was smooth and exquisite to the touch. Even if Chu Feng only wanted to rob it and didn't have any other thoughts, he still felt that it was very good to the touch. However, because his technique wasn't right, he couldn't remove the earlobes at first. Instead, he pulled the ears of the third most beautiful woman under the starry sky red. Chu Feng said that he had offended her as he moved without hesitation to take away the priceless earlobes. You came to Earth to compete with us for opportunities. Originally, these opportunities belonged to us. Then, on the other hand, we can also snatch your opportunities. Isn't that why we've started the competition in advance? Chu Feng said without the slightest blush on his face. Then, his robbery became bold and confident. He took a bead necklace off Ingzhixian's snow-white neck and gasped on the spot. He knew he had struck it rich because this was the legendary Vajra Bodhi bracelet. These were not ordinary Bodhi seeds. They were sparkling and shining, and each Bodhi seed had a Bodhisattva diagram on them. They were innate. Don't tell me this is the Bodhi seed from the Buddha race's divine tree? The quasi-sage race has enough face to ask for it and give it to their most outstanding disciple for cultivation. Chu Feng immediately examined it. He discovered that the speed of energy circulation had increased by 20%, and it was also 20% more vigorous. The effects of the breathing technique had also increased by 20%. This was simply a gem. Chu Feng sucked in a breath of cold air. For the first time, he felt that he had robbed something extremely valuable. It was reported that the Bodhi tree belonged to the Buddhist race's divine tree, one of the top 10 greats since ancient times. It was the most authentic and sacred, and no other planet could compare to it. Even if there were ancient sacred trees lying dormant on Earth, the divine Bodhi tree was still a few notches inferior to the Buddhist race's trees. The most fundamental reason was that on the planet where the Buddhist race resided, their entire race chanted Buddhist scriptures. The runes of the Buddhist race filled the sky, fusing into the Bodhi divine tree. After millions of years of blessing, these ancient divine trees became increasingly unfathomable. Even the smallest leaf contained the principles and true meaning of the Buddhist race. In the dark of night they could emit light that shot into the heavens. This Bodhi seed necklace could help people speed up their cultivation. It was sparkling and translucent like jade. Chu Feng wasn't polite at all. He was incomparably fond of this kind of gem that could increase his combat power and cultivation speed by 20%. He immediately wore it on his neck. This Vajra Bodhi seed necklace still carried Ingzhixian's warmth. It was smooth, exquisite, and had a sweet fragrance. Boundless deity, I've sinned, I've sinned. Chu Feng continued to dig through the treasures and examined Ingzhixian from head to toe. For this reason, he naturally flipped the quasi-saint race's most beautiful woman over so that she faced the sky and revealed her true appearance. This made it easier for him to search through the secret treasures on her body. Hiss! Chu Feng exclaimed in admiration. This woman was truly astonishingly beautiful and somewhat unreal. As expected, she was at the level of perfection. There wasn't a single flaw to be found on her lustrous white face. As for her figure, there was no need to talk about it. She was curvaceous and had astonishing curve. When he looted her just now, it could be said that he had personally examined her. Ingzhixian deserved to be called the third most beautiful woman under the starry sky. Even Chu Feng was slightly entranced as he looked at her like this. He couldn't find any flaws even after scrutinizing her for a long time. Her figure was very slender and was more than 175 centimeters tall. Her long legs were perfectly straight, her small waist was slender, and the places that should be full were exceptionally well developed. Her silver hair was sparkling and sparkling. Her snow-like skin flowed with a precious splendor, and her face was tranquil. Even though she had been knocked unconscious, she still possessed an otherworldly beauty. Her entire being carried the aura of an immortal. If one were to make a comparison, Qin Luoyin was the goddess in everyone's hearts. She belonged to the type that stunned the world and attracted the attention of tens of thousands. Yingzhixian, on the other hand, seemed to be detached from the world of mortals. She belonged to the type that wasn't tainted by the world of mortals. Just like her younger sister, Yingzhixian's eyelashes were very long. Her black eyebrows were curved, her eyes were very big but they were closed. Her fine nose was straight, and her lips were sparkling. I've struck it rich. Chu Feng found the last spatial bracelet on Yingzhixian's body. To be exact, it was an anklet. It was wrapped around her delicate ankle, and the jade foot below was exquisite and snow-white. There were many secret treasures hidden in this spatial anklet, and it was even more abundant than the spatial bracelet. The dozens of armors and weapons he had lost in the battle with Yuchi Kong had all been replenished in excess. Moreover, they were all high-grade items of astonishing value. In particular, there were more than 10 amethyst heavenly thunder crystals. They were emitting a dangerous aura, and their power should be extremely astonishing. He had squandered the few crystals he had seized from Qin Luoyin. Now, he was just in time to replenish them. Afterwards, he tossed Yingzhixian to one side and began to search the silver-haired little Lolita's body. He also found some good things and looted them cleanly without the slightest trace of politeness. Among them, there was a necklace that was the most precious. Wearing it could actually draw in the radiance of the stars and use the energy of the starry skies to drown the wearer in starlight. Chu Feng was moved. In the end, he discovered that the most powerful secret treasures on these two sisters were the Vajra Bodhi bracelet and this necklace. They were divine objects that they wore close to their bodies and could be considered rare treasures. These two divine bracelets could nourish the body, assist in cultivation, and increase combat power. After the search was complete, Chu Feng looked again and again. He felt more or less guilty, even though they had originally come to Earth to fight for fortunes. After all, he had wanted to deal with Wang Jianxing at first, but in the end, he had hit the wrong person. He looked carefully and discovered that if he had to pick out a flaw on the third most beautiful woman under the starry skies, it would naturally be the back of her head. There was a bump the size of a steamed bun, and it was still dripping blood. "I'm a good person. I'll help you bandage it." He touched the big bump, and his hand was stained with blood. Then, he tore off a strip from her snow-white skirt and helped her apply medicine before wrapping it around her head. In the end, he decisively ran away. After all, this was the princess of the quasi-saint race. Her identity was too special. If by any chance someone discovered some clues, then he would have to bear the consequences. He would have one more powerful enemy. Before long, the two sisters woke up one after another. Yingzhixian was very calm. She had a jade-like body and didn't say anything. She quickly got up and checked everything on her body. The silver-haired little Lolita wasn't so calm. When had she ever suffered such a big loss? Normally, she even dared to trick her brother and even wanted to sell her sister. Now, she was immediately infuriated. Her mouth was pouting so high that it could almost be tied to a donkey. She instantly screamed with a sobbing tone and said, "Boo-hoo, my favorite starry diamond necklace is gone. Oh my God, he even stole a little girl's things. He's too bad. He's even more of a scoundrel than the great demon Chu Feng I admire. Quickly return it to me. That's my favorite present." Following that, she cried out in alarm and said, "Oh my God, even my food was stolen. This is too shameful. What kind of thief is this? He has no nature. He even wants to steal a little girl's food. He's really a scoundrel." In the distance, Chu Feng sneezed. When he was checking his spoils of war, he discovered some pretty good little food. He was stuffing it into his mouth and praising it profusely. However, he decisively ignored whether it was stolen from his elder sister or younger sister. On Mount Zhongnan, the silver-haired little Lolita was stunned when she saw Qin Luoyin's torn skirt and the bloodstains on it. Then, she screamed, "Oh my God, elder sister, you have been bullied by bad people. What nonsense are you talking about?" Ing Zhixian glared at her with her big eyes. "Look, the skirt." Ing Xiaoxiao pointed. In reality, when Chu Feng was bandaging Ing Zhixian's wound, his palm was carelessly stained with blood. After that, he wiped it on the other party's skirt. He didn't want to leave with the other party's aura so as to avoid being tracked down. Ing Zhixian lowered her head. She was also in a daze. "Look quickly, where's your belt? It's also been stolen and your skirt has loosened. Oh my God, that scoundrel is indeed a big pervert." Ing Xiaoxiao shouted. That was a high-grade spirit-binding cord and an extremely powerful secret treasure. Naturally, Chu Feng couldn't let it go. Kunlun, Chu Feng had arrived. He was filled with emotions as he revisited this old place. Too many things had happened here. The Black Dragon King, Schiller, and the Arctic King had all died a long time ago during the East-West War. In addition, this place was connected to Purgatory and was close to the Reincarnation Road. He had once entered and exited between life and death. Recently, the most sacred land in the depths of Kunlun was also the home of myriad gods that all the races on Earth were most concerned about. Now it was about to come into being. Chu Feng arrived and saw some familiar faces. For example, he had seen the origin demon race's crown prince Yuan Shiqing from afar, the deity race's strongest descendant Luo Fu, the Tao Child, and the young Buddha. He even saw a terrifying character with origin magnetic swords and mountains arranged around him. His blood qi overflowed to the skies as he crossed Kunlun and fought with a mysterious person. They disappeared into the distance in an instant. Chu Feng suspected that was the origin magnetic sacred physique. His blood qi was silver in color and could control origin magnetic qi. It made people tremble in fear because it could somewhat restrain domains. Boom! On top of a majestic mountain, there was a person with lustrous purple hair. Moreover, his body emitted a purple qi that stretched for dozens of kilometers and drifted above Mount Kunlun. When he faced the sky and let out a long roar, the mountains trembled and the clouds in the sky collapsed. It was another terrifying character. He wasn't the divine glass golden body, the immortal destiny physique, or the innocuous divine physique. His identity was unknown. Chu Feng's expression became solemn. He couldn't underestimate the heroes of Kunlun. There were indeed countless experts in the starry skies, and some unknown people weren't necessarily weaker than the so-called top 10. That person just now was definitely powerful. Then, Chu Feng saw Ing Wudi. He was very calm as he crossed the sky like a divine king. He emitted an extremely terrifying aura that intimidated the crowd. Chu Feng was more or less unnatural because he had just robbed his elder and younger sister. This was a typical case of a thief with a guilty conscience. Boom! Ing Wudi fought with someone and erupted with immortal mist. He was wrapped in brilliance, and his whole body was covered in terrifying battle armor. Mountains and rivers were about to collapse as he raised his hands and feet. When he inhaled, the clouds in the sky turned into wisps of mist and were swallowed by him. When he exhaled, it was as if lightning had blossomed and drilled out from his nose. Clouds and mist gushed up accompanied by lightning. Ing Wudi is fighting with the immortal destiny physique again. Someone shouted. A group of people flocked over to watch the battle. Unfortunately, the two of them didn't want to give them the chance. They left at top speed and entered some secret realms in Mount Kunlun that ordinary evolvers couldn't enter to fight. Kunlun is indeed lively. Chu Feng was excited. He had just arrived and saw some of the universe's most powerful youths fighting. He really wanted to size up how strong these people were. But some people are really unpleasant to the eye. I should knock them all out and rob them clean, he said to himself. Then, he saw a familiar figure. She was graceful and beautiful, and she was wearing brightly colored clothes as she descended from outer space. It was precisely Qin Luoyin. Chapter 630. Qin Luoyin. Chu Feng narrowed his eyes as he stared at her back. This woman was indeed deeply entangled with him. Moreover, they'd had extraordinary intimate contact and even fought life and death battles. Their relationship was extremely complicated, but they would definitely fight to the death if they met again. Unknowingly, Chu Feng found himself holding the diamond chakram and steering the green bamboo boat. He was ready to attack. However, there were many people in front of him. Many evolvers surrounded Qin Luoyin like stars surrounding the moon. They surrounded her and made her the absolute center of attention. So many evolvers daring to come to Kunlun weren't weak. This caused Chu Feng to frown as he found it difficult to carry out a sneak attack. Mount Kunlun was majestic and majestic. Some of the main peaks in this mountain range were exceptionally tall and imposing. There were also countless strange flowers and plants. Many of the peaks were emitting scarlet or purple chi. There were also specks of azure light overflowing in all directions. The scene was extremely beautiful. Now, strands of mist would rise from the entire mountain region. They were all the purest energy, and now, this legendary celestial ground was quickly recovering every day. Long time no see. Fairy Qin is even more graceful than before. She's peerless and capable of toppling cities. A man with long golden hair sighed in admiration. He was extremely tall and well-built. His hawk-like gaze caused many people to tremble in fear. They could sense that his energy aura was exceptionally dense. The surrounding void seemed to be slightly distorted because of his terrifying physique. His every movement contained a terrifying might that made people tremble in fear. The mountain peaks outside of Kunlun had all caved in. This was the work of this man. He had caused several mountain peaks to explode with a single roar while fighting fiercely. This was an extremely terrifying expert. As the descendant of the Golden Taotai, he was a true quasi-divine beast. As expected of the heaven-warping goddess Qin. I heard that demon King Chu could even slaughter saints but was still killed in purgatory. Fairy Qin's bearing is unparalleled. Another person was complimenting and expressing goodwill. This was a man clad in multicolored armor from the peacock race. He had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He was extremely handsome and possessed outstanding strength. His name was Ji Qing, and he was ranked 13th among the younger generation. Everyone in the surroundings expressed their agreement and praised Qin Luoyin's accomplishments. Through this golden Taotai and the young expert of the peacock race, Ji Qing, and the others, one could see what kind of people Qin Luoyin was surrounded by. They were the strongest geniuses of the various races and were famous in the starry skies. Some of them could even be ranked in the top 20. In the distance, Chu Feng was astonished. It wasn't that he didn't know Qin Luoyin was very popular, but it was out of his expectations that these young heroes would bow down to her. Qin Luoyin handled the situation appropriately. She was very suited to this kind of situation and wore a smile from beginning to end. There was a kind of divine luster on her fair face and her peerless countenance when she revealed her true appearance. In addition, with her slender figure and peerless charm, she was like a goddess walking in the Kunlun Mountains. Wherever she went, many evolvers were dazed. A strange expression appeared on Chu Feng's face. This woman was really popular. Thinking about how the two of them used to be entangled, his eyes shone with a profound light, and he felt a strange feeling in his heart. Very soon, an even more powerful man appeared. It was the Origin Demon Race's Crown Prince Yuan Shiqing, a man who dared to contend against the young Buddha, the Immortal Destiny Physique, the Origin Magnetic Sacred Physique, and Ing Wudi. He was known as one of the strongest youths in this world. This was a man destined to stand at the top of the pyramid. His hair fluttered in the wind and his blood energy overflowed the skies. At this moment, he approached and greeted Qin Luoyin intimately. Everyone knew that Yuan Shiqing admired Qin Luoyin. This made many people apprehensive. Even the Golden Taotai and the Peacock Race's expert Ji Qing were apprehensive. Looks like I can't get even with her for the time being. There are too many people around her, and I can't drive the green bamboo boat over to kill her. Chu Feng shook his head and temporarily gave up on the idea of attacking. The entire universe thinks of her as a goddess and consorts her high and mighty. Yet, they don't know that she's sinful and tyrannical. She once attacked me and wouldn't let me go. Really, as the victim, I'm the most qualified to evaluate her. What's with your eyes? If she was incomparably pure and holy, she wouldn't have attacked me, mumbled Chu Feng. If people heard this and understood the inside story, they would surely beat him to death. This was a classic case of taking advantage of others and still acting innocent. Then, Chu Feng saw the myriad star physique Su Qingxian. This person was young but extremely powerful. Moreover, he was reputed to have unimaginable talents and possessed the myriad star physique's bloodline. Once he circulated his breathing technique, the stars in the sky would shine for him and descend upon him, helping him evolve. At this moment, Su Qingxian was dressed in white and looked elegant and pure. However, his eyes were burning as he stared at Qin Luoyin. He had long since regarded her as his Tao companion, destined to walk together. But his expression turned slightly ashen when he saw Yuan Shiqing, the Golden Taotai, and Ji Qing. This was a typical vinegar jar. He thought about it and didn't go over. That was because, although he was peerless and had boundless potential, he was only 16 or 17 years old. He had just risen to the 20th position among the younger generation and wasn't yet a match for Yuan Shiqing and Ji Qing. He walked toward the depths of Kunlun with an ugly expression. What are you jealous about? Chu Feng was displeased. At least at this stage, he was the only one who had an intimate relationship with Qin Luoyin. Who did this myriad star physique think he was? Then, Chu Feng chased after him silently and prepared to make his move. That was because he recalled the day when he fought with Qin Luoyin in Kunlun. This vinegar jar had gone crazy and tried to kill Yellow Cattle, Big Blackie, and the others. After he fell into the purgatory, the myriad star physique Su Qingxian brought people to kill Yellow Cattle, Ouyang Feng, and the others. However, they were injured by Ouyang Feng's rotten ship. Today, I'll collect some interest from this vinegar jar. Chu Feng steered the green bamboo boat and chased after them silently. He hid in the void and, at this moment, was like the most outstanding and powerful assassin. It was difficult for others to sense him. He held the reincarnation blade in one hand and the extra-large golden hammer in the other. He was filled with killing intent. Mount Kunlun. Silver waterfalls were like dragons, flowers were like brocade, and medicinal herbs were everywhere. In an uninhabited area, Chu Feng chased after the myriad star physique and decisively attacked. The reincarnation blade erupted with a dark red radiance like boiling lava as it slashed over. It had to be said that the myriad star physique's senses were too sharp. Even though his cultivation was inferior to Yuchi Kong's, his intuition was more astonishing. As expected, the top-ranked evolvers of the universe's younger generation had frighteningly high talents and divine instincts. They were even more powerful than an old monster like Yuchi Kong. His intuition was too astonishing. Just like Ingzhixian, he actually sensed something at the most critical juncture and instantly evaded the reincarnation blade's fatal blow. Then, the next moment, Chu Feng opened his mouth and spat out an expanse of dazzling sword light that drowned the myriad star physique. "Open!" shouted the myriad star physique. The sky was filled with starlight as he forcefully resisted the unstoppable 7 or 8 flying swords that Chu Feng had seized from various divine sons and saintesses. The next moment, the golden hammer in Chu Feng's hand struck. With a boom, he poured all the energy in his body into it and spurred on glaring lightning. Su Qingxian didn't have any lightning-resistant secret treasure on him, unlike Ying Zhixian, who had a mysterious hairpin on her head that could block all lightning attack. Bang! This was a true thunderclap. The starlight on Su Qingxian's body was shaken and scattered. It wasn't that he wasn't strong enough, but that he was ambushed as soon as he came up and fell into a desperate situation of life and death. If it were anyone else, they would have been cut in half. It was already heaven-defying for him to be able to deal with it like this and not be hit at the last moment. Su Qingxian's hair stood on end, covered in lightning and bloodstains. He staggered and almost fell. There was a big bump on the back of his head and his bones were cracked. His spirit was almost shaken and scattered. It could only be said that under the circumstances where he didn't have the protection of a secret treasure, it was already terrifying and shocking that he didn't have his head smashed. This was the result of his body being baptized by the light of 10,000 stars every day. His constitution was exceptionally strong and tenacious. Boom! Seeing him stagger, Chu Feng smashed the golden hammer down again in preparation to knock him down. Today, it was possible that he could directly get rid of an unparalleled constitution, the myriad star physique. Although this kind of sneak attack was somewhat unfair, Chu Feng didn't feel embarrassed when he thought of the saints from the outer realms joining forces to deal with him. The myriad star physique came from the spirit race and had once wanted to kill Yellow Cattle and the others. Moreover, their saintess, Mu Qinhan, had targeted Yao Yao and even joined forces with the saints of Damning Pure Land to send Chu Feng into purgatory. They were destined to be mortal enemies. He was now targeting the myriad star physique of the spirit race, but he didn't feel any guilt. Su Qingxian's body swayed. After suffering the second hammer blow, the top of his skull split open and his spiritual power almost collapsed. It was difficult for him to bear such an attack. However, he was an extraordinary person after all. When his skull split open, blood dripped from the space between his eyebrows. A rune automatically appeared on his forehead and blossomed with dazzling light. It enveloped him and then tore apart the void. "Where do you think you're going?" Chu Feng was shocked. This person's life couldn't be saved, but a divine object took him away from the scene. This was very troublesome. He drove the green bamboo boat and chased after him into the void passage. At the same time, he thought of Ying Zhixian. He reckoned that once the two sisters suffered such a serious injury like this, the divine runes laid down by the powerhouses of the race would most likely be activated. Now that he thought about it, his attack on Ying Zhixian and the others wasn't considered heavy. It only caused them to faint and was far from life-threatening. But now it was different. Su Qingxian's head was almost smashed open by him and the divine runes left by the saint of the race were activated. In the void crack, Su Qingxian came to his senses. His head was no longer swollen and he flew into a rage out of humiliation. He had almost been killed, so he suddenly took out a weapon. It was his most powerful magic treasure, and he treasured it as much as his life. He attacked the assassin who had followed him in. At this moment, Chu Feng felt his blood run cold. A divine ring flew over in front of him. It was similar to his diamond chakram, but it was richer in transformations. It was a true top-notch secret treasure. With a buzz, the divine ring enlarged like the stars in the sky. Starlight filled the air and it was too brilliant. However, it didn't bombard him directly. Instead, after expanding, the inside of the ring was like a black hole that was about to swallow Chu Feng. A metal ring was actually about to transform into a black hole in the universe. Chu Feng felt a headache coming on. This was truly a strange secret treasure. At the crucial moment, he used the extra-large golden hammer in his hand to smash it. In the end, he discovered that the hammer left his hand and was sucked into the black hole in the divine ring. "If you don't show off your power, you won't know that I have 3 eyes." Chu Feng directly waved his right hand and used his sleeve to cover up the diamond chakram. With a boom, it smashed into the divine ring, causing a huge earthquake. The huge crack in the void became unstable and was on the verge of exploding. Although the diamond chakram was still lacking in transformations and didn't reveal its divine ability, its impact was incomparable. This was because there were a few thread-like imprints on it. These were sacrificial items on the same level as the black talisman paper. They had been ignited at the end of the reincarnation path and offered to the clay idol. Chu Feng and the diamond chakram had also enjoyed a small portion of it. Therefore, under this attack, the boundless starlight that had formed the black hole shrank rapidly with a crisp sound and revealed its original form. With a swoosh, Chu Feng waved his large sleeve and took away the 2 bracelets in the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint. The myriad star physique Su Qingxian was shocked. He hadn't even clearly seen how the other party had attacked or what weapon he had used. His treasures, which were as precious as his life, had changed owners. Afterward, he was so distressed that he was about to go crazy. His heart was dripping blood as he roared furiously like thunder. That was because that bracelet was too precious. It was forged from star mother gold. Not to mention him, even a powerhouse at the Heaven Illuminator level would view it as a treasure if they obtained it. If it was slowly refined, its growth potential would be limitless. This thing could transform into an ultimate weapon. "Return it to me." He was about to fight with his life on the line. However, the divine talisman in his body pulled him away at an even faster speed, distancing him from the bronze-masked man. Chu Feng also wiped off his sweat. It was extremely dangerous just now. If he hadn't decisively used the diamond chakram to smash it, he would have been sucked into the black hole of the divine ring and captured alive. It was truly dangerous, and he had almost failed miserably in an easy task. Su Qingxian was so unresigned that he was about to go crazy. He had great fortune to obtain this bracelet on a dried-up and dead planet. Unexpectedly, he had lost it inexplicably today. One had to know that with this treasure in hand, he was confident that he could compete with the most powerful Tao child of his generation, Yuan Shiqing, the immortal destiny physique, and Ing Wudi when he was only 16 or 17 years old. Now, he had actually lost his world-shocking fortune. Afterward, the myriad star physique disappeared as he chased after it. The divine talisman was too fast. It tore through the void and brought him away from this place. Chu Feng had no choice but to drive the green bamboo boat out of the void. He arrived in the outside world and floated in the air above a majestic mountain in Mount Kunlun. He was very dissatisfied. He had almost made the myriad star physique stay, but in the end, he had escaped. This was equivalent to letting go of a moving treasure trove. What a pity! But when he took out the shiny bracelet, all of his dissatisfaction and regret disappeared. His eyes stared straight ahead, and his fingers trembled slightly. Mother gold? This kind of material was too heaven-defying. It was a precious immortal material that even heaven illuminators yearned for even in their dreams. It could only be chanced upon, not sought. Even if the top 10 controlled many resource planets, it was too difficult to mine mother gold. Even if they found it, it could only be measured in grams. It was simply not enough. Chu Feng compared it with his diamond chakram. Both were made of mother gold, but he still didn't know what kind of mother gold the diamond chakram belonged to. However, Su Qingxian's bracelet was certainly made of star mother gold, a priceless treasure. Oh, if these 2 bracelets were to be smelted together, it would certainly be heaven-defying, he murmured as his eyes lit up. Afterward, Chu Feng's eyes became even more resplendent. It was only a simple robbery and a sneak attack, yet he was able to reap such an astonishing harvest. His heart burned with passion, and he felt that he should continue to work hard. Chapter 631. Chu Feng's heart was aflame. He really wanted to rob everyone. One had to know that none of the evolvers in Kunlun were simple. The weakest were divine sons and saintesses of a planet. The powerful ones like Ing Wudi, the deity race's strongest descendant Luo Fu, the young Buddha, Yuan Shiqing, as well as the origin magnetic sacred physique and the immortal destiny physique were each more powerful than the last. Chu Feng found a deserted place to test how powerful his new treasure was. He weighed it carefully in his hand and found that it was really heavy. This bracelet didn't look big, but it weighed over 5,000 kilograms. This wasn't a weapon an ordinary person could wield. It was too strange and was many times heavier than his diamond chakram. Unless one had evolved to a certain level, this thing couldn't be used at all. Its whole body was densely covered in patterns. These were natural patterns and not man-made. They were all star diagrams, and they were the same color as the starlight in the starry sky. That was why it was sparkling. This was Star Mother Gold. However, there were some black spots on the shiny bracelet. According to legend, these represented black holes. As for the mist-like natural diagrams, they represented cosmic nebulae and so on. The material of this bracelet could be considered heaven-defying. Everything was natural. Even if unmatched methods were used to cut it apart, the diagram markings on the surface would still be the same. Even if taboo methods were used to melt it down and reforge it, stars, black spots, and other things would naturally appear on its surface. This was its miraculous and incomprehensible aspect. Boom! After arriving outside of the Kunlun mountain range, Chu Feng chose a barren land and threw out the bracelet. It was as if the sky and earth were falling apart. Its penetrative power was incomparably shocking. Just like that, it spun out at high speed. One mountain peak after another was broken and then fell with a rumble. Swoosh! With a wave of his hand, the bracelet flew over. His current spiritual power was many times stronger than before, and he could carry such a heavy weapon. Most importantly, this Star Mother Gold bracelet could easily form a spiritual connection and was naturally suitable as a spiritual weapon. One could place a spiritual imprint within it and then receive a call. It was very demonic. After Chu Feng discovered this characteristic, he searched carefully and finally found the mark left by the myriad star physique Su Qingxian. He wiped it clean. However, the Star Mother Gold was not like Chu Feng's diamond chakram. If it weighed 10,000 kilograms, it would still be 10,000 kilograms. It would not increase as energy was injected. Whoosh! In the next moment, Chu Feng examined the attribute of its wonderful technique. After a powerful spirit was infused into it, it buzzed with brilliance and a starry sky appeared around it. There were bright stars and also the ice-cold night sky. Most importantly, there was a black hole inside the bracelet. Rumble! Chu Feng activated it, and the black hole in the bracelet directly uprooted a mountain and stored it in the black hole. This scene was very spectacular, causing Chu Feng to be endlessly astonished in his heart. Then, he grabbed the bracelet in his hand. The black hole disappeared, but Chu Feng could feel that the bracelet was connected to a dark dimensional space. He injected a bit of energy and the black hole appeared again. As he trembled, the world inside turned upside down. The mountain that was sucked in was twisted into fine powder, turning into cosmic dust. Very wonderful! Chu Feng was quite satisfied. This bracelet's power was astonishing. This was a secret treasure that surpassed the visualization level, but that wasn't important. The most important thing was that it could grow. As it was refined and nurtured, it could continuously advance. Chu Feng took out the photon computer and carefully examined it. He understood the Star Mother Gold. It was also known as the Star Mother Gold. Even if one didn't deliberately inscribe powerful runes on it, it could continuously improve itself as an evolver refined it. In the end, the Tao patterns inside would appear on their own and deduce various corresponding techniques, such as the starry sky and black hole. This was the most primitive form of an ultimate weapon, and its growth was limitless. Chu Feng's heart was aflame. Then, he checked other mother gold, such as the time mother gold. This was an ultimate material that could give birth to the power of time. Since ancient times, only 1 or 2 pieces had been found. Other than that, there was also the mysterious yellow mother gold, which was also unfathomable. It was said to be able to seek fortune and avoid calamity. Chu Feng checked again and found that there was no mother gold that matched the characteristics of the diamond chakram in his hand. Could this really be an ultimate waste? But Yao Yao had told him that this piece of mother gold was full of uncertainty. If it wasn't a waste, then it could possibly surpass all others. Then, Chu Feng finally found an article in a very famous forum in the cosmos. It was a section that wasn't really valued. This post couldn't be verified. It only represented that person's opinion and had no evidence. According to what he said, there was a type of mother of gold. Evolvers were unable to develop divine abilities and wonderful techniques when they were at a lower level. Only when they became taboo and supreme would this type of mother of gold manifest supreme divine abilities together with their master. Who could afford to wait for such a weapon? After becoming a taboo character, they probably wouldn't need this kind of weapon anymore. However, he also had another explanation. He said that this kind of mother gold had another wonderful use, and that was fusion. It could smelt the starry sky mother gold, time mother gold, and mysterious yellow mother gold into one furnace, perfectly retaining all of their characteristics. Moreover, it could also stimulate an even more powerful divine power. When he saw this description, Chu Feng was shocked and then incomparably excited. That was because, according to other records, mother gold couldn't fuse with each other. Even if it became an ultimate weapon, it still represented a certain supreme domain. No matter what, it couldn't be fused with other mother gold. Chu Feng's breathing quickened. He was extremely excited as he held his diamond chakram in his hand. He was sure that it was very similar to what was written in that post. Great, fuse with other mother gold. Now this is the invincible mother gold. Moreover, in the later stages of evolution, this invincible mother gold would also release its own divine ability. However, the condition was that it had to be at least a heaven illuminator. Chu Feng keenly noticed the name of the poster, a dead man from the Yang realm. Chu Feng was moved. If it were before, he wouldn't have cared. But ever since he knew that the entire cosmos could be the netherworld and that everyone was a ghost, he was especially sensitive to these words. His heart pounded violently. He had a premonition that this might be a ghost that had accidentally entered this cosmos after dying in the real Yang realm. Perhaps the Yang realm's understanding of Mother Gold was more comprehensive and deeper. That was why that person was able to write about it. Afterwards, Chu Feng set off and returned to Kunlun. The Vajra Bodhi bead around his neck allowed him to circulate his breathing technique and increase the energy within his body by 20%. On his wrist was the Star Mother Gold bracelet, which emitted a powerful might. Chu Feng had tasted the sweetness. After robbing Ying Zhixian and the myriad star physique, he had obtained such an astonishing harvest. This was much better than selling ordinary divine sons and saintesses. If he were to rob those peerless physiques, Tao children, Buddhist children, as well as the selected goddesses and fairies, he wouldn't need to look for opportunities and fortunes for a very long time. Taoist priest of many treasures, who would have thought that you would sever your own cultivation to descend on this planet? At this time, the expert from the peacock race, Ji Qing, who was ranked 13th among the younger generation, revealed an astonished expression as he stared at an old Taoist. Next, a golden-robed young man walked over with an astonished expression. He was the undead silkworm prince, ranked 12th among the younger generation and close to the top 10. His strength was extremely terrifying. However, he was also in a daze. Taoist priest of many treasures, it's really you. You actually severed your own cultivation to come here. In the distance, Chu Feng was flabbergasted. That was because he recognized this old Taoist. How could he have such a great background? Back then, he had pretended to be a charlatan and was very good at deceiving people, making them think that he was a Taoist who had fallen into the mortal world. Who would have thought that this old Taoist had such a great background? This old Taoist was none other than the one whose buttocks were burned by Chu Feng on Mount Zhijin outside of Jiangning using the flames of the revered 8 trigrams furnace. Later on, at the pilgrimage grounds, this old Taoist was extremely immoral. He teased Chu Feng and made him rub a certain spiritual liquid produced from a certain stone on his body in preparation to make a fool of himself. In the end, he was the one who suffered a setback. His buttocks were stained with that mysterious liquid, and whenever he circulated his breathing technique or energy, his buttocks would emit a barking sound. The old Taoist also had a granddaughter who was still at his side. She looked like she was 12 or 13 years old, but her figure was curvaceous and mature. She was simply a tempting little demoness. But one had to admit that this problem lady was an outstanding beauty. She was comparable to the most famous beauties in the universe. Boundless deity, this poor Taoist is only here to join in the fun and find some fortunes for my granddaughter. The old Taoist coughed dryly. He couldn't quite bring himself to meet a junior he knew. The little demoness blinked her large eyes and greeted the undead silkworm prince and Ji Qing in a very virtuous manner. This was completely different from her usual style. Taoist Azure Mountain, you've really exceeded my expectations. Apparently, the undead silkworm prince and Ji Qing were speechless. This old Taoist's status was very high, but he had actually come here to contend with the youngsters. How shameless! The Taoist of many treasures' real name was Azure Mountain. He was quite thick-skinned and said, "This poor Taoist has already been crippled. I'll need you to take care of me after entering Kunlun. Just don't make things difficult for us when the time comes." The undead silkworm prince spoke with disdain in his heart. This shameless old Taoist must have recovered most of his cultivation and came here to bully the younger generation. Chu Feng watched from afar. He didn't pay attention to anything else, but the old Taoist's title of many treasures had caught his attention. Although this old man hadn't killed him before, he had tricked him before. Today, he wouldn't be able to run away. He would give the old man a sneak attack first. Chu Feng made up his mind and prepared to deal with the old Taoist. Then, he found an opportunity. Both the undead silkworm prince and the peacock race's Ji Qing were incomparably afraid of the old Taoist Azure Mountain. Very soon, they found an excuse to run away. This old fellow doesn't seem to be anything special. Why are they so afraid of him? Chu Feng was puzzled. In the end, he steered the green bamboo boat and stealthily moved over. Of course, he had made ample preparations this time. He used his domains to control his weapons and was prepared to launch a volley of hundreds of soldiers to ensure he wouldn't miss. Chi. The next moment, sword radiance flickered, the golden hammer danced, the starry mother gold bracelet suppressed, and the great halberd hacked down. The old Taoist was very powerful, but in the end, he still fell for it. Chu Feng violently smashed the back of his head with the golden hammer 8 times in succession. Lightning interweaved and his head was electrocuted until it was black. He rolled his eyes back with all his might but didn't faint. Chu Feng gave him one last fierce blow. Then, he forcefully grabbed the worn-out sword on the old Taoist's back and ran away decisively. This damned old Taoist was too abnormal. He was really resistant to beatings. The back of his head was swollen and there was a bump the size of a small bowl. But he just didn't faint and resisted with all his might. Moreover, he was about to counterattack. Boundless deity, you scoundrel! You dare snatch my ancestral sword? Come back! The old Taoist shook the large bump on the back of his head. He was flustered and exasperated. Buddha is merciful. This poor monk is fated to borrow this treasure for a few days. We'll meet again if fate allows it. Chu Feng changed his voice and transmitted his voice from afar. Then, he disappeared without a trace. Ouch, you baldy! It hurts so much. You actually dare snatch my things? Why don't you think about who this Taoist is? Come back! The Blue Mountain Taoist was so angry that he almost coughed up blood. Beside him, his granddaughter was dumbfounded after seeing the large bump on the back of his head. It had always been her grandfather who took advantage of others. Today, he was actually beaten up by someone else. This was too strange. The commotion here shocked many people. Many evolvers glanced over in surprise. The Taoist of many treasures has been robbed. How rare! What Taoist of many treasures? It's clearly the Taoist of plunder. Oh my, look, there's a big bump on the back of his head. Everyone was stunned. Such a troublesome old Taoist, who loved to bully the weak, had been beaten up by someone. This was too astonishing. This broken sword seems a bit sinister. I'll keep it for now. In the distance, Chu Feng looked at the broken sword and put it away to find his next target. An hour later, the young expert of the peacock race, Ji Qing, and his sister, the peacock fairy Ji Xian, were attacked at the same time. They were beaten up by someone, and the back of their heads were unreasonably swollen. The two divine feathers on their bodies had disappeared. They had been robbed. Everyone was dumbfounded after seeing this. The brother and sister had also been robbed. Who did this? Truly evil. After a quarter of an hour, the undead silkworm prince flew into a rage out of humiliation and roared repeatedly. He had also been beaten up by someone, and his undead silkworm treasured clothes had been snatched away. Damn your grandpa! You even stole this young master's socks. Aren't you lacking in morals? The undead silkworm prince was furious and ashamed. Everyone was flabbergasted after hearing this. The undead silkworm prince had also been hit. Not long after, another explosive piece of news arrived. The origin demon race's crown prince's sister, Yuan Yuan, a peerless beauty ranked 10th in the universe, had been beaten up by someone. The back of her head was bleeding and swollen like a steamed bun. She had fainted on the roadside. She had been robbed clean, and most importantly, her high-grade secret treasure belt had been stolen. At first, Chu Feng didn't want to rob her. It was only because she saw him checking the loot in the wild with a bronze mask. In the end, he was ridiculed by her, saying that he was pretending to be deep in thought. Why was he wearing a bronze mask in broad daylight? Then, tragedy struck her. She was quickly knocked out by Chu Feng's large golden hammer. Everyone was flabbergasted. This thief was too deranged. He didn't even let off the 10th most beautiful woman under the starry skies. Moreover, he had stolen her belt. Yuan Yuan screamed after waking up and rubbed the bump on her head. She was so angry that she trembled when she found everyone watching. It must be him, that bronze-masked man. That damned bastard! She was so angry that her body was trembling. Moments later, the origin demon race's crown prince Yuan Shiqing appeared. His face was ashen as he asked his sister about what had happened. On this day, the legend of the bronze-masked bandit spread everywhere in Kunlun Mountain. Everyone was panic-stricken and dumbfounded. Everyone was speechless. Roar! A huge beast roar rang out. What's going on? Who's shouting? The golden Tautai was knocked out by a rod just now. He's obviously one of the victims. Is there still justice in this world? Even he has fallen for it. That's nothing. Someone saw the myriad star physique Su Qingxian have a big bump on the back of his head. Damn, it's getting more and more strange. Even this group of peerless geniuses have become victims. Latest news. Someone saw Woody's elder and younger sister. They seem to have been robbed as well because their heads are wrapped in white cloth. They seem injured. Everyone. Chapter 632. Hey, was your family's Saint Child beaten? There's a bump as big as a big bowl on the back of my race's head. No, but he was almost there. Our family's divine child, and that bandit could be said to have brushed shoulders. That's because when he left, at least 5 people in that area were struck by a heavy blow. Their mouths were crooked, their eyes were slanted, and they were foaming at the mouth as they fainted on the ground. Their secret treasures were all plundered clean. This was the greeting and exchange between 2 acquaintances after they met. It was truly sinister. It couldn't be helped. On this day, Mount Kunlun was in a state of apprehension. Moreover, geniuses constantly suffered from sneak attacks and were knocked unconscious by the roadside. This was simply causing people to be in a state of panic. The first thing people asked when they met was whether they were safe and whether they had been robbed by the shameless bandit. Of course, the greetings differed from person to person and gender to gender. Did your young lady lose her belt? Shoo, lower your voice. My young lady was knocked unconscious and the bump on the back of her head is so big. But her belt wasn't lost because it's not a secret treasure. Sigh, my race's fairy is going crazy. She only cursed the bronze-masked bandit in private and didn't expect him to hear it. Very soon, the back of her head swelled up and she fainted in the bathing area. She was inconsolable from shame and indignation. Other secret treasures were fine, but even the spirit pearl necklace on her chest was snatched away. Moreover, that bandit was so careless that a small patch of the saintess's body was bruised when he pulled off the necklace. She couldn't take this lying down and went to find Yuan and Woody's elder sister to take revenge. Currently, many people in Mount Kunlun had encountered sneak attacks. They weren't ordinary people, but all of them were outstanding and famous heavenly geniuses and stunning beauties whose names shook the universe. That was because Chu Feng didn't fancy ordinary people. He specifically looked for big fish to rob. They weren't heavenly geniuses or goddess-like characters in the universe. He didn't fancy them and didn't touch them. This was also the reason why each victim had a greater background than the next. It was as if Kunlun had exploded and the mountains were trembling. Someone said mysteriously, "Hey, have you heard? The 4th most beautiful woman in the starry skies has also suffered a calamity. That's the vermilion bird fairy of the demon race. It's said that because she cursed that thief, she was knocked unconscious while she was bathing and had one of her spirit pearls stolen. It's unknown whether her neck or chest was injured. The other person also acted like a thief and whispered, 'Of course I know. Didn't you see the mountain over there? The flames are overflowing, and the vermilion bird fairy's lungs are about to explode.' This mountainous region was incomparably lively, and no one could remain calm. At this time, Yuan Shurcheng's face was ashen. His little sister Yuan had been knocked unconscious and robbed. Someone actually dared to do this to the original devil race's princess? Were they tired of living? But when he saw the chilly expression on Woody's face, he didn't know why, but he felt a little more relaxed. "Brother Ing, I heard that your elder sister and younger sister were attacked by evil thieves?" Yuan Shurcheng asked. "Don't worry about me." Woody's face immediately darkened. Other people's houses were ransacked by one person, but his house had 2. To him, this was double the damage. He really wanted to seize that thief and beat him into a pig's head. Then, he would chop him up and feed him to the hellhounds. Not far away, the 10th most beautiful woman under the starry skies, Yuan, and the 4th most beautiful woman under the starry skies, the vermilion bird fairy, were walking together. Their jade faces were as cold as ice. "Woody, where's your sister? We have something to discuss with her," Yuan said. It was obvious that they wanted to form an alliance. They were the most stunning women in the starry skies, but in the end, they had suffered such a great loss on this uncivilized planet. How could they swallow this? Yuan Shiqing's face was as black as ink as Ingwudi's when he saw his younger sister. No matter what was said, this kind of matter was absolutely intolerable to a clan like theirs. On this day, myriad star physique Su Qingxian, Yuan, the undead silkworm prince, Taoist priest of many treasures Lan Shan, the vermilion bird fairy, Ji Qing, and a large number of other famous people were so angry that they couldn't believe it. That was because the bumps on the back of their heads wouldn't go down in a short time. There was a bizarre energy that was very difficult to erase, and they reckoned that it would take at least several days for the swelling to go down. All of this was because when Chu Feng made his move, he imitated the symbol on the black talisman paper and materialized it in his palm. The energy he activated carried the attribute of reincarnation. It grew and multiplied without end and was difficult to expel. In the end, a group of famous people on Mount Kunlun had almost become a gathering of bumps. This scene made people speechless. The Blue Mountain Taoist stomped his feet and cursed incessantly. He felt that this was too embarrassing and couldn't suppress his anger. "Little bastard, you've schemed against me. Don't let me catch you. I'll settle things with you sooner or later." Mount Kunlun was practically in a state of chaos. Shouts and cries of murder rang out everywhere. Ingwudi, Yuan Shiqing, the vermilion bird race, the undead silkworm race, and the peacock race were all on the move to find the real culprit. The latest news. The young Buddha's junior sister was also knocked on the back of her head and fainted on the side of the road. This is truly deranged. Motherf *Ker. He won't even let a nun off. The junior sister of one of the top young powerhouses of the universe's younger generation had met with a calamity. This caused an uproar, and in addition to the fact that this young lady from the Buddhist race was also a peerless beauty, it naturally caused a huge commotion. The reason was very simple. This Buddhist lady had publicly denounced the great thief, saying that he should be enlightened by the Buddhist race in order to wash away all his sins. In the end, the great thief enlightened her, and it was said that a few black handprints were left on her beautiful and spotlessly white head. After this race's guardian Vajra found out, the Buddhist race's lion roar shook the world and knocked everyone unconscious. They've started fighting. The great thief has appeared and is fighting with the Origin magnetic sacred physique. Go and take a look. Someone shouted. It had to be said that the Origin magnetic sacred physique was too powerful. As expected of a character who dared to contend with the young Buddha, the Tao Child, and Ingwudi. After unexpectedly discovering Chu Feng, he immediately attacked and tangled with him. At this moment, silver light overflowed the heavens. That was his silver blood energy. It was boundlessly terrifying and drowned this mountainous region like a tsunami. His long hair danced in the wind, his face was as if it had been carved by a knife, and his body was tall and big. Even his pupils were silver. His entire being was like a god of war as he traversed the vast sky and slapped down with his palm. Even the firmament trembled. Boom! Chu Feng brandished his extra-large golden hammer, which erupted with dazzling light as he collided head-on with him. This region was like a great earthquake. In an instant, energy engulfed everything and overturned everything. Millstone-sized rocks filled the sky and the mountains trembled. Several meters wide black cracks extended into the distance on the surface of the ground. This was an exceptional battle. At first, Chu Feng had already stopped attacking and was no longer sneak-attacking people. At that time, he had jumped off the green bamboo boat and studied domains on the ground because he had discovered that this area might lead to the home of myriad gods. There was a domain path there. In the end, he was discovered by the Origin magnetic sacred physique, and a battle broke out. Good thief, let's see where you can run to. Yuan Shiqing rushed over with a gloomy expression as he stared ahead. As for Ingwudi, there was no need to even mention him. He was like a divine king traversing the sky. His entire body was covered in energy radiance like an immortal divine furnace as he suppressed all enemies in all directions. The aura of an expert surged like the vast sea. After that, people saw the myriad star physique Su Qingxian, the undead silkworm prince, the vermilion bird fairy, Yuan Yuan, the blue mountain Taoist, and a large group of victims. They were like flying immortals from beyond the heavens. Their speed was extremely fast as they rushed over to take revenge on the main character. After that, the large group of victims were petrified, including the others. That was because that fellow's equipment was too dazzling and incomparably extravagant. He was wearing the undead silkworm prince's treasured clothes. His entire body was golden and dazzling, giving him the aura of invincibility. After seeing this, the undead silkworm prince's eyes immediately turned red and he gnashed his teeth in anger. Goddammit, it was fine that this shameless thief stole the battle clothes, but he didn't even let off his socks and battle boot. The only fortunate thing was that this person didn't only wear his battle clothes. Chu Feng held the Star Mother gold bracelet in his left hand and unleashed its terrifying might. It transformed into a black hole, and in his right hand was a broken sword that seemed capable of cutting through the void with tens of thousands of sword radiances. The myriad star physique Su Qingxian and the blue mountain Taoist had wonderful expressions on their faces. They wanted to curse and swear. The myriad star physique's bracelet is a supreme treasure. Rumor has it that he picked it up unintentionally from a withered dead star. It was left behind by an ancient evolved being and is an unimaginably great fortune. In the end, it's been stolen. Also, the Blue Mountain Taoist loves to bully the weak. Who would have thought that he would be bullied today? The spectators didn't mind the matter getting bigger and were all whispering among themselves. After that, people saw that there were actually several belts wrapped around Chu Feng's waist. Immediately they felt speechless. Did he have to be so coquettish? Even if they were all secret treasures, there was no need to be like this, right? Oh my, one is the Vermilion Bird Fairy's belt, one is Yuan Yuan's, and the last one looks like Ying Zhixian's. Is he trying to defy the heavens? Yuan Yuan and the Vermilion Bird Fairy were both ashamed and angry after hearing such discussions. Even Ying Zhixian, who was as tranquil as a fairy and hiding in the distance, had an unnatural expression on her face. As for Ying Xiaoxiao, who was by her side, she was panting with rage. She was grinding her sparkling little teeth as she said, "This is too hateful. My necklace is actually hanging around his neck, and there's also Elder Sister's string of divine Bodhi seeds." Upon closer inspection, people were rather speechless. This fellow was covered in treasures from head to toe. For example, the 2 5-colored feathers in his hair were divine feathers he had snatched from the peacock race siblings, Ji Qing and Ji Xian. The 5-colored divine light flickered, and could protect his head from the attacks of wondrous techniques, and ensure that the mask on his face wouldn't crack. In the distance, Qin Luoyin frowned as she looked at this great thief. Especially when she saw that he was wearing several belts, she couldn't help but recall that her belt had been snatched away by Chu Feng. She couldn't help but feel that it was odd. Then, she suddenly trembled because she felt an indescribable tremble in her lower abdomen. A certain young Taoist sensed it and tears streamed down his face as he complained, "Why did I have a sudden impulse? I felt that someone with the same bloodline as me was nearby. The heavens took pity on me. Could it be that my father of this life has finally come to save me? I want to cry. I've been fighting with my mother every day, and I'm about to be played to death. I can't live on like this anymore. I've even resorted to self-mutilation. Fortunately, the mysterious gas I obtained from the reincarnation cave can merge with the void. Otherwise, I'd be dead for sure." The Origin magnetic sacred physique was indeed powerful. Chu Feng had no choice but to deal with him seriously and fight fiercely with him. "Thief, where are you going?" Finally, the Origin demon race's crown prince, Yuan Shiqing, couldn't help but attack. "Stay here!" Ingwudi also shouted. He couldn't help but make a killing move as he swooped forward. "Heh, it's so lively. I'm here to get rid of the evil too." The immortal destiny physique had originally fought to the death with Ingwudi, but now, he was targeting Chu Feng. That was because he had taken a fancy to that Star Mother gold bracelet. "Thief, hand over your life!" The myriad star physique Su Qingxian also shouted. He could see that a considerable number of people wanted to snatch the Star Mother gold bracelet that originally belonged to him. "Heh. The Vermilion Bird Fairy, Yuan, and the others sneered. They looked beautiful and flawless, but when they attacked, each one was more merciless than the other. As for the Blue Mountain Taoist, he didn't utter a single word. He produced a black millstone and used it as a brick as he quietly ran behind Chu Feng. He was prepared to give Chu Feng a taste of his own medicine and attack him from behind. The undead silkworm prince was spitting out silk to weave a large net. He wanted to capture Chu Feng alive. He hated this wicked masked man who had even stripped his undergarment. Everyone attacked as a group. Chu Feng received the energy of his enemies from all directions and suddenly blasted it in one direction. Boom! There, smoke and dust filled the sky. A small mountain collapsed, and after the domain runes flickered violently, a vast pure land appeared out of nowhere. Strange flowers were in full bloom in the center, and jade grass covered the ground. Auspicious vapors rose and immortal light shone brilliantly. Chapter 633. A path opened up in the home of myriad gods. Chu Feng was the first to charge in. The legendary divine medicine, immortal fruits, and scriptures carved on the pill cliff all attracted his attention. The Blue Mountain Taoist was faster than the others. He had his granddaughter wait outside as he crossed the small path in the domain and followed closely behind Chu Feng. His movements were swift and nimble. The other's eyes were like lightning. Even the immortal destiny physique, and origin magnetic physique, stopped chasing Chu Feng and charged in to search for him. Legend had it that this place contained supreme fortunes and the most precious resources on Earth. There were some secrets that said that the 2 heaven illuminators on Earth had completed their evolutions in this place. Who wouldn't be jealous? 2 heaven illuminators had appeared in a pure land in succession, and in the same generation at that. This was even more shocking than the legends and somewhat unimaginable. That was because evolvers would try their best to avoid other heaven illuminators at the critical moment if they wanted to climb to the most powerful realm. Otherwise, they would hinder their path. There was some truth to the saying that 2 tigers couldn't live on the same mountain. The order energy emitted by powerful people could suppress a domain and greatly affect the evolution of other supreme experts. But the home of myriad gods was very special and bizarre. The 2 heaven illuminators weren't affected one after another. Kill! The group charged in. They wanted nothing more than to find the most powerful energy inheritance pagodas on Earth. White energy mist surged inside. Ganoderma and ginseng grew in the crevices of the stone cliffs and by the waterfalls and creek. Some places were shrouded in scarlet mist, while others were shrouded in blue mist. There were even some areas that were suffused with purple mist. The atmosphere of an immortal was astonishing. Boom! After entering, Chu Feng immediately discovered a cave residence blocked by a stone door. He raised his hand and struck it with his palm, but unfortunately, he couldn't shake it open. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh! Yuan Shiqing, the young Buddha, Ingwudi, and the others rushed over with dark expressions. They stared at him with undisguised killing intent. The 4th most beautiful woman under the starry sky, Vermilion Bird Fairy, was wearing a fiery red dress. Her towering chest was heaving up and down violently. Even now, she could still vaguely feel the pain of the bruises on her chest. Her beautiful eyes were spewing fire as she stared at Chu Feng. Yuan was dressed in a long black dress. Although she was extremely sexy and had fiery red lips, her temperament was as cold as ice. She was also glaring at Chu Feng. The Buddhist woman was dressed in white, and the black handprint on her head had not disappeared. She had been chanting, but when she saw Chu Feng, she stopped. Waha! Where are you going, little thief? You stole my star diamond necklace and even stole my snacks. You're too bad. The silver-haired Lolita, Ing Xiao Xiao, shouted. As soon as he said that, not to mention the others, even Chu Feng's face darkened. This was too King embarrassing. Snatching snacks from a little girl, what kind of show was this? However, he recalled that he ate some food on the way to Kunlun, and it indeed tasted pretty good. Wasn't this from Ing Zhixian? He decisively embarrassed. Behind him, a large group of people swarmed in. Heavens, the Kunlun immortal residence. We found a good place. Let's charge in. The group shouted. The Pure Land was in complete chaos. It was evident that Chu Feng's situation wasn't good. Even though many people were looking for fortunes, there were still many who were trying to lock onto him. At this moment, the various races in the starry skies hadn't received any feedback yet. They didn't know that the home of myriad gods had opened and were in heated discussions about the Kunlun bandit. That was because what had happened earlier had left them speechless. One after another, a group of Heaven's Pride-level characters had been hit until the back of their heads were swollen. Even fairies and goddesses had lost their belt. This shocked countless people in the starry skies. They couldn't understand what kind of terrifying freak this was. He dared to touch the origin demon race's princess, rob the quasi-immortal race's Ing Zhixian, and blaspheme the vermilion bird fairy. He was too valiant. One had to know that there were all kinds of peerless physiques there. There were people like the young Buddha, Yuan Shicheng, and Luo Fu there, yet this bandit still dared to act like this. He was too bold. A human trafficker just died, and now a bandit has appeared. As expected, this is a barren land that produces scum. A saint snorted angrily with an incomparably unsightly expression. People saw that she was the saintess of the spirit race, Mu Qinghan. She was in a terrible mood because her clansman, the myriad star physique, Su Qingxian, had lost his star mother gold bracelet. Ing Zhixian, the vermilion bird fairy, the Buddhist lady, and Yuan Yuan have all lost their belt. I really want to discuss with that bandit and see if I can sell them. Sigh, I'm starting to miss that human trafficker, Chu Feng. If it were him, he would definitely hold an auction. There's nothing he wouldn't dare to sell. Some of the powerful evolvers who did not know how to behave themselves sighed. Kunlun is really dangerous. Such a bandit has actually appeared who can fight against the origin magnetic sacred physique. How terrifying! At the same time, there were also media reports on Earth, reminding citizens to pay attention to safety when traveling. Now we're broadcasting an important piece of news. According to the extraterrestrials, a fierce bandit has appeared in the Kunlun region. The victims include nuns, Taoists, and other religious people from the outer realm. There are also mutant races such as Taotais and Peacock. We hereby warn all evolvers who have left in the near future to be careful when passing by Kunlun. Everyone was rather speechless when this piece of news came out. Only Big Blackie, the Manchurian tiger, the old donkey, and the others who were strolling in the eastern seas Mount Eternal were in a daze. Then, they began to howl and laugh loudly. In the depths of Kunlun. Little bandit, hand over your life. The vermilion bird fairy launched an attack. Her fiery red dress fluttered as she was the first to launch an attack like a fairy treading the wave. The Kunlun immortal residence is here. If you don't seize the fortune and fight with me, be careful that you won't get anything. Chu Feng's voice was hoarse as he tried to reason with her. In the end, there was one more person attacking him. Yuan Yuan didn't say a word. She waved a shiny black whip and, with a crack, twisted the void and almost whipped him in the face. Waha, hit him quickly. This scoundrel is too wicked. He's not cute at all like the great demon Chu Feng. He actually dares to steal my food. The silver-haired Lolita wished for the whole world to be in chaos. She shouted at her brother, "Ing Wudi, when are you going to capture him? Your sister has been bullied badly by him. And Yuan Shiqing, your sister's belt has been untied by him. How can you keep your composure? Hey, and that bald Buddhist child. Your junior sister's head has been blackened by him. How can you still chant scriptures? Motherf *****. Not to mention the demon race's crown prince Yuan Shiqing, even her brother Ing Wudi wanted to beat her up. So much so that a few black lines appeared on the Buddhist child's forehead. Boom. The next moment, the three experts really went forward and surrounded Chu Feng. They swore to capture him. In addition to the few peerless beauties, this place was about to explode. Chu Feng grinned. The situation wasn't looking good. He didn't plan to stay for long. With a swoosh, he charged into the depths of the Pure Land. That was because he discovered that the stone door and the immortal residence were most likely just a pretense. There weren't many fortunes here. The domains here weren't complicated. It didn't seem like an important place. Kill. With a ripping sound, a beam of sword light appeared. The deity race's most powerful descendant, Luo Fu, was blocking his way. This made Chu Feng furious. He hadn't even settled the score with this race yet, but they had taken the initiative to attack. Boom. Chu Feng had no choice but to meet the enemy head-on. He held the Star Mother gold bracelet in his hand and directly faced it head-on. Immediately, there was a huge explosion of energy. This area was filled with boundless starlight and a faintly discernible black hole. The scene was terrifying. It had to be said that the deity race's #1 young expert and one of the top 10 heroes in the cosmos was very terrifying. He successfully stopped Chu Feng's figure and prevented him from directly charging over. In such a short period of time, Yuan Shiqing, the Buddhist child, Ing Wudi, the Vermilion Bird Fairy, Yuan, and the others had arrived and attacked with all their might. Boom! The origin demon fist smashed over and black mist filled the sky. Yuan Shiqing was like a primordial demon king. His body was expanding rapidly as he looked down on Chu Feng. His hair was disheveled and his eyes were cold and emotionless. This fist caused the void to tremble and almost explode. It collided with Chu Feng's golden palm and emitted a dull sound. Blood energy surged between the two and surged high into the sky. At the same time, the Vermilion Bird Fairy emitted boundless flames that almost drowned Chu Feng. Fortunately, the immortal silkworm on his body glowed at the critical moment and blocked the flames. Boom! Ing Wudi arrived. His palm was like jade and emitted immortal energy. It was incomparably vigorous as it struck toward Chu Feng's back, threatening him with a fatal blow. Chu Feng suddenly turned around and spat out a beam of lightning toward Ing Wudi. At the same time, he swept out with the Blue Mountain Taoist's worn-out sword. The Buddhist child arrived. His body was like a golden Buddha and his white robes blossomed with golden light. He looked benevolent, but his body was filled with a dense murderous aura as he smashed over with his fist. Boom! Chu Feng's palm glowed with golden runes on it. They were carved from the black talisman paper, and were now revealing their profundities. When the two collided and the Buddhist race's secret techniques were released, Chu Feng felt his chest tighten. This was an unimaginably powerful enemy. Following this, he discovered that the origin demon race's crown prince Yuan Shiqing, Ing Wudi, and the others were also blossoming with boundless light. Their auras rose sharply as they used their trump cards. Chu Feng was apprehensive. During this brief contact, he had gauged the strength of these people and felt the enormous pressure. They were all extremely terrifying opponents with higher realms than him. If he were to be trapped by such a group of people, there would be no chance of survival. Chu Feng, you deserve to die. At this time, the myriad star physique had also arrived. Swoosh! In a split second, Chu Feng roared and rushed toward the Buddhist girl. Using her as a breakthrough point, his blood energy boiled and golden energy surged as he used the power of the black talisman paper. Boom! Chu Feng forced the Buddhist girl back and used the earth to inches technique to dodge a few times before rushing out. However, he had also paid a great price. He had suffered punches from the Buddhist child, Ing Wudi and Yuan Shiqing. Even though they hadn't hit his vitals and only touched his shoulder and back, he still coughed up large mouthfuls of blood. His back, in particular, might have been pierced through if not for the undead divine silkworm's treasured clothes. With a swoosh, Chu Feng entered the mountainous region and used the domains here to shake off his opponent. Then, he disappeared into the depths of the Pure Land. His face was ashen as he muttered to himself, "No matter what I do, I have to pay the price. I've robbed a group of people, so naturally I'll become public enemies. But it's no big deal." Of course, the danger just now was mainly related to him wanting to figure out their true strength. At this time, he took out the green bamboo boat in a deserted area and sat on it. He steered it forward and hid his tracks. Finally, he was safe. That person makes me feel uneasy. I keep feeling that he'll harm our race and I have to eliminate him. I don't know why, but I've had a bad premonition since the first time I saw him. An hour later, as Chu Feng steered the green bamboo boat through the Pure Land, he heard this voice. Then, he saw the deity race's most powerful descendant, Luo Fu, talking to a few elders in a low voice. His gaze immediately turned cold. Just now, Luo Fu had attacked him inexplicably because he had a bad premonition. Chu Feng became cautious. Some people were born with terrifying and sharp divine instincts. Without a doubt, Luo Fu was one of the best among them. He had only seen him once, but he could already foresee that he was going to harm the deity race. This was truly shocking. One had to know that he had already done his best to restrain his killing intent and didn't leak a single strand. Yet, this person had still sensed it. This kind of divine instinct wasn't weaker than a saint's and belonged to an ability that surpassed ordinary evolutionary levels. Then, Chu Feng made his move. With the reincarnation blade in hand, he steered the green bamboo boat and swooped down without a sound. Then, he slashed out directly. Luo Fu dodged. He was hundreds of meters in the air, and his spiritual senses were too sharp. However, an elder beside him had half his head chopped off by Chu Feng's blade and died a violent death. Chi 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 next, blade radiance erupted. In one breath, Chu Feng killed 5 elders. They were all at the peak of the visualization realm, and one of them had even surpassed the visualization realm. However, he was also abruptly slaughtered. "You're courting death," Luo Fu shouted angrily. "Ah!" At the same time, a miserable cry came from afar. The golden Taotia's head fell to the ground. He had been killed by the destiny immortal physique and died a violent death in the Pure Land. This was a top-ranked young expert, but he had actually died a miserable death. Next, miserable cries rose and fell in succession. The Pure Land was in chaos as people began to fight over fortunes. Bloody massacres and killings began. There's actually the fragrance of the immortal medicine. The divine medicine has come into being. It can allow people to be reborn and rapidly evolve. Find it for me. Listen, the chanting is coming from that stone tablet. It's a powerful breathing technique. Could it be the robbery induction? Kill your way over. Chapter 634. The previous chapter, Myriad Star Physique, shouldn't have shouted out Chu Feng's name. It was a typo and has been corrected. The home of myriad gods was previously peaceful like a tranquil Pure Land. But very soon, this place was dyed in blood and miserable cries rose and fell. In order to fight over breathing techniques and divine medicines, everyone was killing each other. In the distance, a giant golden beast lay in disarray. It was the Golden Tautai, an extremely powerful man. His head had been cut off and his original form was revealed. On the other side, a giant black snake was coiled into a snake mountain. It hissed and flicked its tongue, but it was ambushed by a 100-meter-long silver rat. Its neck was bitten off in one bite. This silver rat was very powerful. It could cross the void and suddenly appear. It was an extremely tyrannical killer. Be careful, there's actually a void rat. Don't let it take advantage of us. Even the top 100 experts of the universe's younger generation were trembling with fear. They were worried about this giant silver rat. Roar! A loud roar was heard. The Origin magnetic sacred physique's hair was disheveled and his pores were steaming with a silver blood energy that overflowed the sky. He was incomparably brave and powerful. Bang! He suddenly attacked and blasted down with a punch. A dozen or so silver figures in the sky wailed and fell one after another. Then they exploded and turned into a bloody pulp. They were a dozen or so golden snakes with wings that buzzed when they flapped. Just now, dozens of peak visualization experts had already been pierced through by them. This was a type of flying serpent, a descendant of an extremely powerful quasi-divine beast. Its body was like a sword and could easily penetrate the opponent's flesh and blood. In the end, after encountering the Origin magnetic sacred physique, they were all blasted down by a single punch and turned into a bloody pulp. Everyone, be careful. The hellish ant race has also arrived and is launching a sneak attack. Someone cried out in alarm. Then, he immediately howled in grief as a black ant the size of a rhinoceros appeared noiselessly behind him. Its large pincer teeth bit him in half and then dissolved him into a pool of pus and blood. In just a moment, 40 to 50 large black ants moved like the wind. They flickered with a metallic luster and were as large as rhinoceroses. They appeared in the Pure Land and were impervious to swords and spears. These were the hellish ants. Not long ago, this place was very peaceful. But in the blink of an eye, following the appearance of opportunities, blood flowed everywhere and became a battlefield of slaughter. Chu Feng had killed 8 elders of the deity race in one breath, which infuriated Luo Fu. He immediately charged over, but he pounced on empty air and was almost struck by a blade radiance coming from the void. As the number 1 expert of the deity race, Luo Fu's strength was outstanding. His divine senses were especially sharp. He constantly estimated Chu Feng's position in the void and counterattacked fiercely. Chu Feng had made up his mind to kill the strongest descendant of the deity race. However, he didn't continue fighting recklessly. The fortune of the home of myriad gods had appeared, and he didn't want to miss it. Without a sound, he steered the green bamboo boat into the distance and charged toward a stone tablet. There were many figures here and many people were fighting. Among them, the immortal destiny physique and Ing Wudi had exchanged a few blows, causing smoke and dust to surge into the air. Some evolvers were affected and exploded in mid-air, turning into a bloody mist. The stone tablet was 300 meters tall and overflowing with colorful light. Runes flickered on it from time to time. White mist curled up and the chanting of ancient scriptures rang out. This was an imprint left behind by the forebears. Soon, Chu Feng revealed an odd expression. He was sure that this wasn't the robbery induction inheritance. Because of this, he heaved a sigh of relief. He was no longer worried about this breathing technique spreading to the starry skies. Soon, the immortal destiny physique and Ing Wudi also left. They each had their own ultimate breathing technique. If it wasn't the robbery induction, it wouldn't attract them. Chu Feng smelled a sweet fragrance in a medicinal garden. This was the embodiment of a certain great medicine that had matured. He was searching for it, but at the critical moment, a sharp claw suddenly rushed towards him. It was ruthless and terrifying. One had to know that he was driving the green bamboo boat and hiding in the void. How could he be discovered and sensed? Soon, he understood that this was a void rat. Just like him, It came and went without a trace. He didn't know when it had set its eyes on him and decided to kill him. I haven't even started on you yet. You actually dare to attack me. Chu Feng sneered. He evaded the attack and charged over with the reincarnation blade in hand. The void rat race was rare, but they were all ruthless characters in the assassination world. They were incomparably difficult to deal with, and it was rare for them to fail once they had set their eyes on someone. Pfft. In the end, after exchanging a dozen moves, a large rat head flew up and fell to the ground. It spat out a large amount of blood as its corpse and spirit were destroyed. Its path of reincarnation had been severed, and it was thoroughly dead. Squeak, squeak. The sound of rats came from the sky as 5 void rats appeared again. Some were silver, some blue, and some gold. They were of different sizes and colors, and their eyes were faint as they stared at Chu Feng with hatred. Chu Feng was astonished. This race was rare, so how could so many appear all of a sudden? He felt that things weren't looking good. He drove the green bamboo boat into the air and charged over. In his opinion, this race posed a greater threat to him because it would expose him easily. A bright scar appeared in the void. It was the sound of the void splitting open. It extended rapidly towards Chu Feng like a blade and was about to split him into 2. This was the legendary dimensional space slash. Normally, only old monsters could use this kind of ability. However, the void rat race was too strange. They could penetrate the void and possess this ability. Even Chu Feng trembled in fear in the face of this kind of dimensional space slash. He didn't dare to take it head-on. Pft, pft, pft. The reincarnation blade glowed as he swept through the area and fought a great battle with the 5 void rats. In the end, he killed 3 of them in succession after dozens of moves, and the remaining 2 turned to flee. Chu Feng caught up to one and cut it into 2. Blood splashed down from the void, but in the end one escaped and hid in the void. This made him frown. Afterward, he paid no more attention to it and began to search along the area. There was an alluring fragrance within a domain. There were many evolvers here, but none of them could enter. Chu Feng broke it and quietly charged in. No one discovered him. He couldn't help but frown after entering. The domains were layered one after the other, and even he had to expend quite a bit of effort. In the end, he arrived at the rocky forest of this pure land. This area had already separated itself from the medicinal garden. He was astonished. If he wasn't proficient in domains, it would have been very difficult for him to reach this place so quickly. This was simply a fortune prepared for him. Very soon, he saw a low stone mountain within the forest. There was a dark cave halfway up the mountain, and a strong medicinal fragrance was wafting out from within. Is it really an immortal medicine? He was somewhat excited. A freshly picked immortal medicine held great significance to an evolver. Some could accelerate one's evolution, some could allow one to exchange blood and reconstruct one's bones, and some could allow one to obtain a wondrous power akin to order. Not all mutant fruits and great medicines could allow one to step onto the path of evolution. Some of the benefits bestowed upon living beings were even more terrifying, powerful, and astonishing than evolution. Chu Feng cautiously entered the cave. As expected, this place was densely packed with domains. There were layers upon layers of defenses here. Fortunately, he had long since reached the Great Master level. Otherwise, he might not have been able to enter so smoothly. Following which, the green bamboo boat appeared from the void. The densely packed domain runes blocked the path ahead, making it impossible for him to cross over. He could only land on the ground and put away the magical boat. The domain runes lit up within the dark ancient cave, and the path ahead was especially brilliant. Chu Feng felt as though he had stepped onto a small path piled up with stars. He broke through the domains along the way and arrived at the end of the path without mishap. There, he saw a stone room and a rotten wooden chest. The fragrance was coming from this place. Eh? Chu Feng was astonished. He had thought there would be a divine medicine growing on the ground. Why was it inside an old chest? Chu Feng raised the reincarnation blade, and was just about to pry open the chest. However, it was at this moment that he felt a chill run down his spine. He was horrified. Swoosh! He decisively retreated and immediately escaped from the stone room. He flew along the path he had come from without looking back. Boom! It was in the stone room that the rotten wooden chest exploded. The energy was so terrifying that it was enough to melt an evolver who had surpassed the visualization realm. There were 8 violet heavenly thunder amethyst exploding here. They were automatically triggered the moment Chu Feng stepped into the stone room, causing a huge explosion. One could see a purple mushroom cloud rising up and tearing the space apart. If Chu Feng had hesitated just a moment ago, he would have been destroyed in both body and soul. Even so, the energy waves coming from behind caused him to cough up large mouthfuls of blood. The immortal silkworm robe on his body flickered intensely to help him neutralize it. Then, with a crack, some parts of his body were torn apart. One could imagine how terrifying the violet heavenly thunder amethyst here was. The energy waves just now would have torn his body apart if not for the immortal silkworm robe's protection. Chu Feng's eyes were like small suns, surging with flames and terrifying golden radiance. His heart was cold. This was definitely a trap set up by someone. Someone was inviting him into a trap. The so-called great immortal medicine was definitely fake. But how could it be so targeted? Buzz! Runes lit up in the air and powerful domains appeared. Hundreds of sword chi shot out to block Chu Feng's escape route and interweaved into a screen of light. There was something wrong with this stone mountain. The whole thing was a trap. Chu Feng suspected that someone had brought in a secret domain treasure from the outside world. The whole mountain actually didn't belong to Mount Kunlun and could be enlarged or shrunk. That was because if it were an ordinary stone mountain, it would have long since turned into magma and ashes after the explosion just now. How could there be anything left? This didn't seem like something left behind by the ancients. After careful thought, it was more like a trap set up to kill a domain master. The 8 bizarre violet heavenly thunder amethyst had torn apart the space but didn't cause the whole mountain to explode. Naturally, this wasn't an ordinary stone mountain. At this time, many parts of the mountain became sparkling and translucent. They lit up with a dazzling brilliance as many domains were completely activated. At this moment, there was someone even more shocked than Chu Feng. It was a group of elders who had gathered together and were standing guard outside. All of them were flabbergasted. We only listened to the Shilin clan's suggestion and set up a domain trap area. Someone actually broke it and charged in? Could it be that person really didn't die in the purgatory? Could it be that he broke the domain and charged in? The trap we set up without any hope really worked. The people guarding the area nearby were stunned. Then, all of them began to tremble in excitement. They felt like they had inadvertently caught a vicious crocodile. Luo Fu from the deity race, a middle-aged man from the Shilin clan, a strange youth from the Netherworld race, and Qin Luoyin from the damning Pure Land rushed over immediately. This was an absolute killing domain laid down by the 4 races. They had suddenly appeared here. It might not necessarily be him. There are many people with profound attainments in domains in this world. But we know all the domain masters who came to Earth. None of them came in. We'll know the truth in a while. Luo Fu and the middle-aged man from the Shilin clan were conversing. Chapter 635. Chu Feng was increasingly convinced that the entire mountain was a domain treasure that could change its size at will. It had been brought into the home of myriad gods and was specially set up here to trap people. This was especially true when he thought of a serious consequence. This was a trap specifically targeted at him and a domain master. Could it be that someone had set up this trap because they suspected that he wasn't dead? This caused his pupils to turn cold and his entire being to surge with killing intent. Now, he was in big trouble. Every part of the mountain was sparkling with translucent runes. The paths spread out like a spider web and were well developed in all directions. However, they were all dead ends, and it was guaranteed that he would be killed if he took a careless step out. He had actually fallen into a domain treasure and was trapped here. Chu Feng frowned as he dispelled the trap with great difficulty. This was much more difficult than when he had first entered. There were dead ends everywhere, and a single misstep would result in him falling into this meticulously constructed danger zone. Swoosh! As Chu Feng strode forward rapidly, hundreds of purple runes floated up from within the belly of the mountain like blooming redbud flowers. Then, they interweaved into a large net and enveloped him. He drew his reincarnation blade and slashed horizontally and vertically, destroying these purple energy runes. Even though Chu Feng understood domains and possessed profound attainments, he had no choice but to use pure brute force to break them because he simply didn't have enough time to use his domain technique. This was a secret treasure with someone operating it in secret. This person would cause trouble at any moment and take his life. This was even more dangerous than ordinary domains. This wasn't a passive trigger but rather someone guarding it. There's at least a domain master spying on me in secret. I must kill him. Chu Feng stood within the belly of the mountain. He had triggered several large explosions and all of them were surging energy clouds. Even he was drenched in blood and had suffered significant injuries. Any other Grandmaster domain researcher or powerful evolver would have died long ago. Not only was he proficient in domains, but his own level of evolution was also sufficiently profound. That was why he could protect himself. He cleared out a safe area and sat down cross-legged without moving. He sensed carefully specks of golden light appearing in his eyes as he observed and searched for the situation. He wanted to kill the hidden domain master and completely solve the problem. Afterward, Chu Feng was shocked. He felt that this stone mountain wasn't simple. There were dozens of complete domains inside, and it wasn't the work of a single person. The restrictions and runes inside were extremely powerful and filled with killing intent at every step. If he wanted to crack it, he would need to spend a lot of time. Chu Feng stood up, holding the samsara knife and the stone box. He didn't want to waste time, so he was ready to use the remaining colorful flames, the fire of 6 paths of samsara, to burn a path. Interesting, Chu Feng might not be dead? This time, I'll send him on his way. Outside, the most powerful descendant of the deity race, Luo Fu, wore a smile on his face, but he appeared somewhat feminine. He had boundless enmity toward Chu Feng because Chu Feng had killed his own brother, the deity's son Luo Yi. He had even slaughtered the saint of the race and dealt a great blow to the deity race's prestige. Beside him, the middle-aged man from the Shilin clan was also wearing a chilly expression. This time, the Shilin clan had taken the lead and laid down this secret domain treasure as a precaution. Who would have thought they would actually catch such a big fish? Even though they couldn't confirm whether or not that person was Chu Feng, they had a strong feeling that it was most likely true. The most powerful descendant of the Netherworld race was wrapped in black mist as though he had come from the Netherworld. Only his eyes carried a gloomy glow and were filled with the aura of death. He also laughed and said, "If it really is him, then it'll be interesting. Let's kill him again." Back then, the deity race had supported the Netherworld race from behind the scenes to invade Earth. Meanwhile, the Shilin clan had changed sides at the critical moment and led the people from the outer realms into Earth for a bloody massacre. It could be said that the deity race, the Netherworld race, and the Shilin clan were the main culprits behind the destruction of ancient Earth's evolvers. Beside him, the damning Pure Land's descendant, Qin Luoyin, wore a gloomy expression. She couldn't understand how Chu Feng had escaped. Under the damning Pure Land saint's interrogation, She had confessed that Chu Feng hadn't died when she left. Now, it seemed that he had really escaped alive. At the same time, Qin Luoyin realized that the damning Pure Land had most likely met with the deity race and the Shilin clan to inform them that Chu Feng was trapped in the purgatory and hadn't died completely. Come, let's go in and kill him. Otherwise, he might go invisible again when he comes out. He has nowhere to hide, only in that domain treasure. Luo Fu sneered. He swore in his heart that he would capture Chu Feng, trample him beneath his feet, chop off his head, and then show it to everyone. Within the stone mountain, within this large-scale domain treasure, Chu Feng didn't want to waste any time. He was afraid that a long night would bring trouble. After the stone box was opened, the multicolored flames burned and directly destroyed the domain. It annihilated the various substances within the stone mountain and burned out a large hole to connect to the outside world. At the same time, he discovered a figure within the secret treasure. That was because he had opened his fiery eyes during this process and could see everything clearly. In the distance, that person's heart was thumping violently. He turned around and wanted to leave. You dare scheme against me? Where are you going? Chu Feng shouted and rushed over with his blade in hand. He used the 6 paths of reincarnation flames to open up a path. This thing was very effective against experts when they least expected it, but if someone was on guard, they might be able to evade it. But now, the path was a dead end. Using the reincarnation flames to open up a path was very useful. Swoosh! The stone wall turned into magma and then evaporated. All sorts of domain runes were destroyed. Chu Feng ran like a bolt of lightning. When there was no one around, he didn't force himself to use the wondrous art he had obtained from a certain divine son. Instead, he directly used the world's end near at hand. After all, he was the most proficient with it. With a boom, the air exploded. He was simply too fast. With the stone box in one hand and the reincarnation blade in the other, he directly crossed over and caught up to the domain master. You are indeed Chu Feng. Fiery eyes, world's end near at hand he was shocked. Everyone said that Chu Feng had died in purgatory, but now he had confirmed that it was just a rumor. The true culprit had appeared and was right in front of him. Since Chu Feng had exposed his identity, he naturally wouldn't leave anyone alive. He was confident that he could silence him and thus didn't bother to hide it. The domain master was very powerful, but when he encountered an even more powerful peak domain master and a ruthless evolver who could compete with the top 10 of the universe's younger generation, the domain master was naturally in for a tragedy. With a bang, Chu Feng chased after him and finally used the back of his blade to hack at the domain master's body. This caused half the bones in his body to break and left him with his life. Tell me, who asked you to do this? The domain master was quite unyielding at first. He even wanted to use his domain to deal with Chu Feng at the last moment. The surrounding runes lit up in a very secretive and terrifying manner as energy erupted in an instant. But it was a tragedy for him. Chu Feng's attainments in domains were even more terrifying. Dozens of magnetic stones flew out and fixed the place in place. Then he leapt up and kicked the domain master's jaw until it shattered. His teeth fell out and he screamed in misery. The domain master regretted his actions. He had only taken action because he had accepted the Shilin clan's request. How could he have expected that there was a man many times younger than him on Earth with a domain technique that was much more powerful than his? He said everything. It was the Shilin clan, the deity race, and the netherworld race who had led this operation. The damning Pure Land had also been invited to set up a trap. They were worried that you weren't dead and set up this trap with a probing attitude. Who would have thought that you would actually be alive? In the end, Chu Feng gave him a quick death. He put away the reincarnation blade and smashed him into a bloody mist with the golden hammer. I won't use the reincarnation blade on account of your straightforward confession. Oh, not good. It was at this time that the Shilin clan's middle-aged man's expression changed as soon as Luo Fu, the Netherworld race descendant, and Qin Luoyin stepped into the stone mountain. Retreat. This secret domain treasure is collapsing. The people inside are about to escape. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. They all jumped outside, and beside them was a group of dozens of elders. They were all elders from the 4 great orthodoxies. Since this treasure is about to be destroyed, then let's burn it thoroughly, the Shilin clan middle-aged man muttered to himself. Then, he threw out one profound magnetic stone after another. He was actually a domain master. He was about to take action and detonate this large-scale secret treasure. Boom! In the end, the stone mountain glowed and became almost transparent. Then, it exploded with a boom and completely disintegrated. It was too sudden. Chu Feng let out a muffled groan as he flew out covered in blood. He had almost been finished off by the Shilin clan's domain master's swift and fierce methods. Fortunately, he was wearing the immortal divine silkworm robe, the Taoist of many treasures sword on his back, and Su Qingxian's Star Mother gold bracelet. He had one secret treasure after another for self-defense. All of them had been plundered from a group of heavenly geniuses. There were secret treasures even in inconspicuous places. For instance, he had Ying Zhixian's hairpin in his hair, which had once blocked a dozen strikes from his golden lightning hammer. For instance, he had Ying Xiaoxiao's star diamond necklace around his neck, which could draw upon the starry sky's energy to protect his body. Even so, Chu Feng was drenched in blood from the explosion. Of course, if it were anyone else, they would have most likely died even if they were one realm above the visualization realm. The scene after this large-scale secret treasure exploded was simply too terrifying. With a bang, Chu Feng fell out amidst the surging energy and the explosion of light. He crashed heavily onto the ground and formed a huge pit. Even so, the bronze mask on his face hadn't shattered and was perfectly preserved. That was because he was very flirtatious. There were 2 peacock feathers in the hair on either side of his temples, and at the same time, Ying Zhixian's earrings were hidden. They emitted divine light and protected his head and face. Chu Feng, you're quite lucky to not die in purgatory. Today, I'll personally send you to hell. Scram into the netherworld and I'll send you on your way again, Luo Fu from the deity race shouted. His movements were faster than his voice, and he had long since charged over like a bolt of lightning. The deity blade in his hand chopped straight down toward Chu Feng. Clang! A glaring light erupted from the pit, accompanied by a metallic sound that could tear one's eardrums apart. Chu Feng rushed up with the golden hammer in hand and collided with the deity blade. The energy that erupted was too vigorous and caused the ground within a radius of several kilometers to sink. Large black cracks spread out like a spiderweb. It was a terrifying scene. The netherworld divine son spoke with indifference and also a kind of transcendence. He deliberately provoked Chu Feng and said, He, Chu Feng, you're quite lucky to actually be able to escape from purgatory. But let's end it here. Back then, my ancestor replaced the evolvers on this planet and led my race to become the 11th strongest race in the universe. Today, I'll send you to your grave and allow the past to reappear. This planet should have fallen long ago. He circulated the netherworld breathing technique, and in a split second, the entire area was filled with a deathly aura. Black mist surged, and his entire body sank into darkness. He held a black spear in his hand and thrust it toward Chu Feng's head. He was ruthless and merciless. Chu Feng didn't say a word. With a boom, he smashed the Star Mother gold bracelet toward the netherworld divine sun, erupting with the strongest power. Clang! Sparks flew in all directions, followed by a cracking sound. The tip of the spear was broken. How could it block a weapon made of Star Mother gold? Hand it over. The netherworld divine son was very savage. He wanted to seize the bracelet immediately. But the Star Mother gold bracelet revolved and emitted terrifying energy. It formed a black hole and was about to swallow him. Kill. Luo Fu attacked. The deity blade slashed again toward the black hole. In just a split second, the three experts had exchanged over 100 blows. Their movements were too fast, and their strength was too great. They were all top-notch young experts in the universe. Chu Feng, do you think we don't know you've returned just because you're not making a sound? The Netherworld Divine Son shouted. Attack together and kill him! The middle-aged man from the Shilin clan stood in the distance and ordered the dozens of elders to attack together. At the same time, he shouted toward the distance, "The bronze-masked bandit is here. Do you know who he is? He's Demon Chu." Even though he hadn't confirmed it, he had already shouted it out loud. The middle-aged man from the Shilin clan had a ruthless look in his eyes. He wanted to borrow everyone's strength to slaughter Chu Feng and cut down this calamity. Heh heh. Chu Feng laughed. He didn't express his position, nor did he say whether or not he was Chu Feng. He attacked fiercely and fought with them. This was especially true when the dozens of elders charged over, giving Chu Feng the opportunity to inflict mass damage. The Star Mother gold bracelet vibrated and spun out with a hum. Amidst popping sounds, 4 peak visualization realm elders were smashed into pieces and exploded into a bloody mist. Moreover, a black hole appeared within the bracelet as it spun and swallowed 5 elders. Following Chu Feng's spiritual energy, the people who had been swallowed screamed miserably as they disintegrated inch by inch. They died a miserable death. Clang! At the same time, he drew his reincarnation blade, ready to fight to the death with Luo Fu and the Netherworld Divine Son. Is it really him? Qin Luoyin's heart palpitated. Her emotions were complicated because she had a small life in her stomach that she couldn't refine. It was related to that person. As she approached, her abdomen fluctuated violently, causing her to stagger. She placed her hand on her abdomen and immediately stopped herself. At this moment, the young Taoist cried out strangely, "I can feel it. It's the call of my bloodline. This must be my father. He's finally appeared. Is he here to save me? Father, this Taoist misses you. Hurry up and subdue this reliable mother. I'll protect your son, who's destined to become the universe's #1 god of war." He was so excited that he began to toss and turn, causing Qin Luoyin to retreat repeatedly with an unnatural expression. Of course, if the Taoist knew that it was his father who had smashed him with a brick in front of the reincarnation cave and snatched away his black talisman, he would probably curse his mother. Of course, he would curse his father even more and then fight it out with his father. Where's the bronze-masked bandit? Princess Yuan Yuan of the Origin Demon race was the first to arrive. He's Chu Feng? The vermilion bird fairy, clad in a fiery red dress, had also arrived. She cried out involuntarily and was incomparably suspicious. Is this true? That wicked and immoral bronze-masked man is my favorite great demon, Chu Feng? I don't believe it. Ying Xiaoxiao also appeared with her elder sister. The girls' gazes were unkind as they stared at Chu Feng. That was because the belts on his body were too dazzling. Not only was he flirtatious, but he was also a kind of silent provocation that made them gnash their teeth in anger. As for the others, there were also many who rushed over. Chu Feng? I've always wanted to meet you. Let me. Origin Magnetic Sacred Physique's silver blood chi surged as he descended from the sky. At this moment, someone cried out in surprise. Innocuous Divine Physique had also appeared. Chapter 636. The energy behind him was burning hot and vigorous like boiling molten iron. It was also like a sun being grasped in someone's hand, its light piercing the firmament as it fiercely smashed toward Chu Feng. That instant seemed like an eternity. The world was scorched and all the water vapor was evaporated. Even the evolvers around him were groaning as their flesh and blood dried up. They couldn't withstand this kind of vigorous energy. Innocuous divine physique. His punch was fatal. It moved the deity race's strongest descendant, Luo Fu, the netherworld divine son, and Qin Luoyin. This was an extremely terrifying expert. Chu Feng suddenly turned around. His palm glowed as a golden rune emerged to meet the sudden punch. It collided with the innocuous divine physique for the first time. With a boom, the energy boiled like a vast ocean formed from liquid metal. The raging waves beat against the shore, but it also melted everything. The pure land was collapsing, space was distorting, and vitality was being destroyed. Chu Feng felt a sharp pain in his fingers as a fiery energy rushed into his body like a flood breaking through a dam. It was like a volcano erupting with magma and wanted to rush in. He let out a light shout as his palm and fingers glowed. The reincarnation rune revolved and burst forth with blinding divine radiance as it counterattacked. Boom! A huge explosion occurred in this place. Mushroom clouds appeared one after another around Chu Feng and the innocuous divine physique. This didn't seem like a body made of flesh and blood at all. It was more like the explosion of a nuclear weapon. There was even dense radioactive material pervading the air and spreading rapidly. Puft, puft, puft. In the surroundings, many evolvers coughed up large mouthfuls of blood and flew out like scarecrows. They were swept by the shockwave and their bodies were tattered and covered in bloody holes like sieve. Some people's flesh and blood dried up immediately. As for their hair, it was instantly incinerated and turned into ashes. There were more skeletons on the ground, letting out mournful cries. Most people retreated and looked at this scene in shock. World of Man, Yang Realm Fist. The deity race's strongest descendant, Luo Fu, was moved. He couldn't help but say such words, which alarmed many people. The netherworld divine son's pupils were faint, and his gaze was as sharp as lightning. One had to know that the Yang realm had only been mentioned in recent decades because there were heaven illuminators who had explored some extraordinary things in the broken universe in the primal chaos. In recent years, the strongest descendants of the various races had been instilled with knowledge that was very subversive to them. When Chu Feng heard this, his expression changed. No wonder the yang energy in innocuous divine physique's punch was so heavy. It was like a glowing divine furnace burning. It was related to the Yang realm, so how could an ordinary person withstand it? However, he blocked it. The reincarnation symbol on his palm flickered, directly obliterating the other party's profound technique and blocking this fist. On the other side, a person was wrapped in a golden gas. That was Yang Qi, the energy of extreme Yang. It was like a flame boiling and burning fiercely. Just by standing there, many evolvers were unable to get close to him. That was because they simply couldn't endure it. The Yang Qi was too strong, and it was as if a ghost was facing the blazing sun in the sky. Without a doubt, the innocuous divine physique's sudden punch just now had wanted to directly end Chu Feng's life and give him a fatal blow. This was because not many people present dared to say that they could block this kind of fatal attack. The yang energy was too heavy, the profound meaning of the fist technique was too terrifying, and the energy was incomparably vigorous. Chu Feng realized that he wasn't the only one who had learned about the Yang realm's secrets from the red spider lily. Right now, all the powerful races in the depths of the universe had long since become aware of it. At the same time, he thought of the robbery induction breathing technique. Because it was related to the Yang realm, some of the powerful races in the universe coveted it and wanted to seize it. Chu Feng thought about how the deity race had worked so hard and joined forces with the netherworld race to descend on Earth to massacre. He reckoned that they had wanted to seize the robbery induction breathing technique. At that time, did they already understand a lot of things? Boom! Then, without saying a word, Chu Feng attacked fiercely and tyrannically. He temporarily abandoned Luo Fu and the Netherworld race's divine sun and leaped up like a golden-winged rock spreading its wings. He flew forward and attacked the innocuous divine physique. Boom, boom, boom. The two of them collided 3 times in a row. Apart from each other, nothing could be seen. Outsiders couldn't see clearly either because it was all energy. The glaring light drowned out the heaven and earth. The entire Pure Land was filled with golden light and surging yang qi. Many people were about to suffocate. Their breaths quickened as they clutched their chests and heads and fled into the distance. When their figures separated, Chu Feng and the innocuous divine physique were several kilometers apart. They stared at each other in silence. Swoosh! The innocuous divine physique turned around and left. Before he left, he revealed a mouthful of snow-white teeth and smiled at Chu Feng. The people around him retreated quickly and opened up a path for him. That was because when this person's energy pervaded the air, ordinary evolvers couldn't stand it at all. The yang qi was too strong, and they were like ghosts who couldn't touch this kind of energy. Chu Feng chased after him as fast as lightning. He wanted to know if this so-called innocuous divine physique was the Earth's true one. Were there 2 people with this kind of physique? If it was the Earth's true one, he would definitely make this person suffer a fate worse than death. He punched forward through the air, causing the void to shake. Energy tides surged and the entire Pure Land trembled. However, the innocuous divine physique was very decisive. His body flashed and didn't meet him head-on. He submerged into the mountain rocks like a ghost and disappeared after a few leaps. Chu Feng could have chased after him at first, but his path was blocked. A man covered in silver blood energy blocked his path. Every time he raised his hand, all the mountain peaks on this land would tremble and sway violently. The scene was somewhat terrifying. He was like a god of war that had descended into the world and blocked Chu Feng's path. This was the origin magnetic sacred physique. His blood energy gushed out from all the pores on his body and drowned out the sky. It was so oppressive that the souls of many evolvers trembled. This person's physical body and spirit were excessively powerful and exceptionally terrifying. His pupils were silver and gushed with silver flames. His entire aura was exuberant to the extreme and intimidating. In a split second, the origin magnetic sacred physique attacked. He had already said earlier that he wanted to attack Chu Feng. Even though he couldn't confirm whether he was the real deal or not, he couldn't hold back anymore. That was because the origin magnetic sacred physique innately controlled the power of magnetism. It was a nightmare for domain researchers, but there were also incomparably powerful domain researchers who could restrict this kind of physique and pose a threat to him. In short, if their strengths were similar, he and the domain researchers would mutually restrain each other. He fixed his eyes on Chu Feng. When his fist smashed down, the void rumbled as if a painting was about to be torn apart. The aura was too violent. A field of origin magnetic light rotated and wanted to cover Chu Feng within. It was blazing and tyrannical, and in the end, it formed a well that wanted to store Chu Feng inside. Chi. Chu Feng held the reincarnation blade in his hand and swept forward. The blade slashed at the well formed from origin magnetic light. A huge explosion occurred here and densely covered the area with runes. Everyone's minds trembled. As the two of them exchanged blows, a large field of runes blossomed. Chu Feng's heart trembled. This origin magnetic sacred physique also knew some domains. Even though he wasn't a true domain genius, his innate affinity with magnetism was extraordinary. Chi. Being passive wasn't Chu Feng's style. Wherever the long blade went, it split open the magnetic well and slashed at the person surging with silver blood energy. Boom! As the origin magnetic sacred physique roared, the earth split open and countless giant rocks flew into the air. There was a large number of magnetic stones and domains underground, and they were actually being used by him. He mobilized them, and many origin magnetic lights covered the area. At the same time, the evolvers standing in the distance all cried out in surprise. The metal weapons on their bodies flew backward and gathered toward the origin magnetic sacred physique. He could receive tens of thousands of weapons, and then he brought them all out and blasted them toward Chu Feng. All kinds of flying swords, spears, halberds, and dagger axes fell at the same time. The metallic luster flickered and was glaring and frightening. The cold air was dense and cold light shone. All the evolvers were petrified. Their divine weapons had been inexplicably snatched away and turned into the origin magnetic sacred physique's weapons. If it were them participating in the battle, they would probably be killed by their own weapons immediately. Clang, clang, all kinds of metallic sounds rang out in this area and exploded in the sky. It was a mass of boiling energy. Chu Feng held the long blade in his hand and crisscrossed the vast sky. After he suddenly slashed out, one powerful weapon after another was destroyed. Not only were there all kinds of broken swords, blade heads, and spears falling, but there was also energy surging and exploding. This was practically sweeping away an army of 1,000. Wherever the long blade went, all weapons were destroyed. Heh heh! The origin magnetic sacred physique sneered. As his hair fluttered, he took out a broadsword. It was huge and terrifying, and there was a brilliant luster amidst the purple color. His silver blood energy was boiling. With the broadsword in his hand, he crossed 6 to 7 kilometers with a single step. He attacked again from the distance and slashed toward Chu Feng. Clang! In the sky, the dark red long blade collided with the huge purple sword. In a split second, divine light shot out in all directions, and a world-shocking energy spread out and surged in all directions. Chu Feng trembled. He could see at a glance that the material of this sword body was extraordinary. It was polished from magnetic marrow, a rare divine material that was originally used to set up domains. Now it was polished into a weapon. Clang, 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 an intense collision occurred. With the reincarnation blade in hand, Chu Feng battled with the origin magnetic sacred physique, shocking the entire Pure Land. Then, the news spread to the outside world, and the starry skies were overwhelmed with shock. A mysterious expert had come into being and fought against the origin magnetic sacred physique. He had also fought against the innocuous divine physique. In just a short moment, he had clashed with two peerless physiques and fought intensely without being defeated. The most important thing was that many people were saying that this might be Chu Feng and that he had come back alive. In an instant, the starry skies were in a complete uproar. A mysterious and powerful person had stimulated two peerless physiques. This was a bit terrifying. Who is this person? Is he really Chu Feng? I don't believe it. He should have been buried in purgatory. In the Pure Land, Chu Feng let out a long cry. He was unafraid of the origin magnetic sacred physique's peerless reputation. He soared into the sky, and scarlet blade beams shot out from his hand one after another. They were like lightning connecting the heavens and the earth, and connecting the heavens. The origin magnetic sacred physique's pupils were faint, and his silver pupils were like sharp swords. The broadsword in his hand was like a true dragon that danced and soared up and down. Clang! 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 There was an intense collision. They were like a golden-winged rock fighting a silver true dragon. They fought from the sky to the ground, and from the ground to the sky. It was incomparably intense. Chi! At this moment, another terrifying blade beam lit up. Luo Fu appeared with the deity blade in his hand. His aura rose sharply, and the most important thing was that he was like a bolt of lightning. He arrived behind Chu Feng in the blink of an eye and arrived high in the sky. He suddenly slashed out with a world-shaking blade. Chu Feng, the bronze-masked bandit. You have humiliated my deity race and robbed fellow Tao friends from all walks of life. Everyone has the right to punish you. In reality, he had already made his move when he opened his mouth. His speed was far faster than the sound wave. The deity blade was brilliant and practically wanted to tear Chu Feng's back into two halves. Clang! Chu Feng didn't look back. The reincarnation blade in his right hand collided with the origin magnetic, sacred physique's broadsword. Rays of light pierced through the heavens. His left hand held the Star Mother gold bracelet and waved it backward. It smashed onto the deity blade, and the intense energy exploded like the sun. Whoosh! At this moment, the netherworld race's divine sun soared high into the sky. Murderous intent burst forth as he charged toward Chu Feng. His palm was like a black millstone that wanted to collapse the void. He wanted to obliterate Chu Feng's physical body. At the same time, many people below were eager to give it a try. At this moment, the origin demon race's crown prince had arrived. The immortal destiny physique was also nearby. Most importantly, the vermilion bird fairy, Yuan Yuan, myriad star physique Su Qingxian, and the other victims were also present. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.